The streets of New York in the 1950s and 1960s had a rhythm all their own. A pulse felt most strongly in the neighborhoods, where ambition and survival intertwined in a delicate, often dangerous balance. It was in these neighborhoods, crowded with brownstones and narrow alleyways, that Nicholas Corozzo first began to navigate the complex and unforgiving world that would define his life. Born into a city where opportunities were limited, and the lure of easy power was always present, Corozzo learned early that loyalty and cunning could open doors that were otherwise tightly sealed. His early years were marked by the typical struggles of a working-class upbringing, but even as a child, he showed a sharp mind and an instinct for understanding people that went far beyond the ordinary. He observed carefully, listening to conversations, noting the subtle gestures and unspoken agreements that governed the behavior of those around him, and learning that in the streets, appearances were often deceptive and every interaction carried potential consequences. As a teenager, Corozzo's life began to intertwine more directly with the underworld that ran quietly alongside the visible life of the city. The environment he grew up in was one where the traditional paths of school and steady work were often overshadowed by the allure of quick money, influence, and respect gained through other means. It was during these formative years that he began forming connections with older men who moved with authority and discretion, individuals who commanded respect without raising their voices, and whose power was measured in both fear and loyalty. Corozzo was not impulsive. He watched, he learned, he waited. He understood the importance of patience, of watching the long game unfold, and of knowing when to act and when to remain in the shadows. By the late 1960s, he had earned a reputation as a reliable and intelligent young man, one who could be trusted to handle delicate situations with discretion and efficiency, a quality that would serve him well in the years to come. The rise of Corozzo within the ranks of organized crime was gradual but deliberate. He did not seek notoriety or reckless attention. Instead, he positioned himself strategically, cultivating relationships and demonstrating a capacity for leadership that others recognized and respected. He understood the hierarchy of power, the unspoken rules that governed behavior, and the critical importance of maintaining loyalty while carefully balancing ambition. Those who observed him noticed a calm and calculating demeanor, a man who spoke softly but whose decisions carried weight. In the world of New York's underworld, where alliances were fragile and rivalries could turn deadly, such a combination of intelligence and restraint was rare and highly valued. Corozzo's ascent was not marked by public spectacles or flamboyant gestures, but by a quiet accumulation of influence, a careful threading of connections, and the ability to manage conflicts before they escalated into violence. During the 1970s, Nicholas Corozzo began taking on more prominent roles, often behind the scenes, ensuring operations ran smoothly while remaining largely invisible to the public eye. He specialized in maintaining the flow of business, keeping disputes contained, and ensuring that the organization's reputation remained intact. His work required an intricate understanding of both human nature and organizational dynamics. He was a master of negotiation, able to mediate conflicts and broker agreements that benefited all parties while subtly consolidating his own position. The nickname "the shadow behind the curtain" emerged during this time, not from media headlines, but from the whispered recognition of his peers, acknowledging that Corozzo's influence extended far beyond what was immediately visible. He was everywhere and nowhere, present in every critical decision yet seldom in the spotlight, a figure whose counsel was sought quietly and whose judgment was rarely questioned. As Corozzo's power grew, so did his understanding of risk. He was acutely aware that the life he had chosen was fraught with danger, that one misstep could dismantle everything he had worked to build. Unlike some who sought attention or flaunted their power, Corozzo maintained a careful balance between visibility and discretion. He cultivated relationships with law enforcement, politicians, and business figures, understanding that influence could be both a shield and a tool. His strategic thinking extended to every facet of his life, from financial decisions to the management of alliances, and his reputation for fairness and reliability made him a respected figure, even among those outside his immediate circle. Every choice was measured, every move calculated, reflecting a mind that understood the intricate dance of power, loyalty, and survival in the complex ecosystem of New York's underworld. Despite his growing prominence, Corozzo remained aware of the human cost inherent in the world he navigated. He witnessed betrayals, rivalries, and violent conflicts that left lasting scars on those involved. and he understood that power was inseparable from responsibility and consequence. This awareness shaped his approach, reinforcing a sense of caution and a preference for control over chaos. He was not a man who sought violence for its own sake. Rather, he saw it as a necessary tool when diplomacy or negotiation failed. In this way, he embodied the paradox of the Underworld leader, a figure capable of both ruthless action and meticulous restraint, a man whose presence commanded respect and whose absence could create uncertainty. The balance he maintained between these opposing forces became the defining feature of his leadership style, enabling him to navigate turbulent times with a clarity and precision that few could match. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Nicholas Corozzo had solidified his role as a central figure in New York's criminal landscape. His influence extended across multiple sectors, from traditional organized crime activities to more subtle forms of control and manipulation. He was a strategist, a mediator, and a guardian of the organization's integrity, ensuring that the machinery of the Underworld functioned smoothly. Yet, even as he achieved power, he remained grounded in the principles that had guided him from the beginning: patience, discretion, loyalty, and a deep understanding of human nature. These qualities allowed him to navigate conflicts, expand influence, and protect both himself and those who depended on him. Corozzo's story was one of careful accumulation rather than reckless ambition, of intelligence and strategy prevailing over brute force, and of a man who understood that true power often lies in what remains unseen. The life of Nicholas Corozzo offers a window into the intricate workings of New York's underworld, revealing a world where influence, loyalty, and strategy define success, and where the consequences of missteps are immediate and severe. His journey from a young observer of human behavior to a masterful operator behind the scenes illustrates the importance of patience, discretion, and understanding in navigating complex systems. While the allure of power and control is ever present, Corozzo's story serves as a reminder that the pursuit of influence is inseparable from responsibility and consequence. The lessons embedded in his rise are clear. Observe carefully, act strategically, maintain loyalty, and respect the balance between visibility and discretion. For those who venture into the shadows, it is not the loudest voice or the flashiest gesture that determines legacy, but the quiet mastery of relationships, decisions, and timing. A mastery that Nicholas Corozzo exemplified throughout his life. As the 1970s gave way to the 1980s, Nicholas Corozzo's presence in New York's underworld had evolved from quiet observation to deliberate orchestration. He had learned the art of patience early on, understanding that power was rarely seized overnight, and that respect was earned more through consistency than spectacle. Corozzo moved like a shadow across the city, present in every key decision yet rarely drawing attention to himself. This invisible influence became his trademark, allowing him to operate in a world defined by competition, secrecy, and unrelenting scrutiny. Unlike many who pursued notoriety or reckless dominance, he built his authority through intelligence, foresight, and a strategic approach to every interaction. Those who underestimated him often found themselves caught in situations they could neither anticipate nor control, a testament to his careful, methodical rise. During this period, Corozzo's focus was on consolidating influence and expanding his network of trusted associates. He understood that in a world as volatile as organized crime, alliances could shift with a single misstep, and that the most successful leaders were those who balanced loyalty with calculated leverage. He cultivated relationships not just within the crime families, but also with those who operated on the fringes: business figures, law enforcement contacts, and community influencers who could provide intelligence, opportunity, or protection. His approach was never impulsive. It was measured, each connection evaluated for its long-term potential and the way it reinforced his strategic objectives. Through this web of relationships, Corozzo maintained control over a complex ecosystem, ensuring that operations ran smoothly while minimizing exposure to risk. The scope of Corozzo's activities during the 1980s reflected both his ambition and his understanding of timing. He oversaw operations that ranged from gambling and loan sharking to more subtle forms of influence, such as controlling labor contracts or mediating disputes between competing factions. His ability to negotiate without confrontation earned him a reputation as a problem solver, someone who could navigate conflicts that might otherwise erupt into open violence. Unlike many who relied solely on intimidation, Corozzo wielded influence with discretion, knowing that the appearance of calm authority often mattered more than force. His decisions were guided by a combination of instinct, intelligence, and careful observation, a formula that allowed him to achieve results without drawing unnecessary attention or provoking retaliation. While his work demanded constant vigilance, Corozzo also understood the human dimension of power. He recognized that fear could command obedience, but loyalty commanded respect and longevity. He invested in the people around him, ensuring that those who worked for him felt valued, protected, and respected. This approach not only reinforced his authority but also created a network of individuals who were personally invested in his success and survival. In a world where betrayal was ever present, Corozzo's ability to foster trust and maintain loyalty became one of his most valuable assets. It was this combination of strategy and human insight that allowed him to navigate the treacherous waters of organized crime, securing his position as a figure whose judgment and discretion were relied upon by both peers and subordinates. The period was not without its challenges. Rivalries within the crime families intensified as younger, more aggressive members sought to assert control, testing the patience and resolve of established leaders. Corozzo faced these tensions with characteristic composure, diffusing potential conflicts before they escalated and asserting influence through negotiation rather than open confrontation. He was keenly aware of the consequences of miscalculation, understanding that even a single error in judgment could unravel years of careful work. This awareness shaped his daily approach, reinforcing a cautious, deliberate style that emphasized observation, assessment, and strategic intervention. He became known for his ability to read situations and people with remarkable accuracy, anticipating problems and opportunities that others failed to see until they were unavoidable. As his responsibilities expanded, Corozzo also took care to maintain a low profile outside of his immediate circle. Unlike some contemporaries who sought the spotlight, he understood that discretion was not just a strategy, it was a shield. He cultivated a public persona of ordinary business engagement while keeping his criminal activities confined to trusted associates and private environments. This dual existence required constant vigilance and impeccable timing, but it allowed him to operate with a level of freedom and safety that many of his peers could not achieve. His reputation for discretion and reliability made him a sought-after mediator and strategist, someone capable of resolving disputes that might otherwise have escalated into violence, and someone whose counsel was respected even by those who did not share his ambitions. Corozzo's influence extended beyond mere operations. He had a keen sense of the structural dynamics of the organization, and understood that leadership was as much about vision as it was about enforcement. He could see patterns in behavior, anticipate shifts in power, and identify opportunities for consolidation or expansion. His strategic insight allowed him to position himself in ways that maximized leverage while minimizing exposure to risk. Every decision, every alliance, and every negotiation was calculated to strengthen his position while ensuring the stability of the broader network. This combination of foresight, human insight, and operational control established him as one of the most effective figures in New York's underworld during this era. Despite the calculated nature of his rise, Corozzo's story is also marked by the human realities of the world he inhabited. He witnessed the consequences of unchecked ambition, the volatility of rivalries, and the personal costs of a life defined by secrecy and danger. These experiences reinforced the importance of prudence, loyalty, and measured action, shaping his approach to both business and personal relationships. He became not just a strategist, but also a guardian of the organization's stability, someone whose presence reassured allies and deterred potential adversaries. His ability to balance these demands operational oversight, alliance management, and personal discretion became the defining feature of his leadership style. Through the 1980s, Nicholas Corozzo's reputation as the shadow behind the curtain solidified. He had demonstrated an exceptional ability to combine intelligence, discretion, and human insight, creating a network of influence that extended far beyond what was immediately visible. His approach was not one of brute force, but of strategic positioning, cultivating relationships, and exercising judgment with precision. In a world where appearances could be deceptive and loyalty was constantly tested, Corozzo's steady, calculated rise exemplified the power of patience, observation, and careful decision-making. His story offers a lesson in the importance of understanding both people and systems, illustrating how influence can be achieved and maintained without resorting to unnecessary violence or spectacle. In reflecting on this period, it becomes clear that Corozzo's success was built on a foundation of strategy, discretion, and loyalty. He demonstrated that in a complex, high-risk environment, true power is rarely immediate or flashy. It is cultivated through careful observation, measured action, and the ability to navigate relationships with intelligence and tact. His rise during the 1980s stands as an example of how mastery of both human and organizational dynamics can create lasting influence, even in the most challenging circumstances. The story of Nicholas Corozzo is a reminder that patience, insight, and loyalty are often the most powerful tools available to those who seek to navigate difficult and dangerous environments, and that careful, calculated action is far more enduring than impulsive displays of force. By the mid-1980s, Nicholas Corozzo had fully established himself as a figure whose influence ran deep, though quietly, through the veins of New York's criminal underworld. He had learned that power was rarely flaunted in public, and that the most effective authority often went unnoticed until it was too late for anyone to challenge it. Corozzo operated like a chess master, always thinking several moves ahead, calculating the potential outcomes of decisions before committing to action. While others sought flashy reputations or immediate gains, he focused on the slow and steady accumulation of control, influence, and operational knowledge, ensuring that every step he took strengthened his position and minimized exposure to danger. His reputation was built not on bravado but on intelligence, discretion, and an almost instinctive understanding of the people around him. One of the defining aspects of Corozzo's operations during this period was his focus on financial control and organization. He understood that influence could be wielded not only through force or intimidation, but also through money and the ability to manipulate systems to achieve desired outcomes. He oversaw gambling operations, loan sharking networks, and extortion schemes with meticulous attention to detail, ensuring that profits flowed smoothly while risks were contained. Unlike many who allowed greed or recklessness to interfere with judgment, Corozzo maintained a disciplined approach, balancing opportunity with caution. He monitored cash flow, assessed vulnerabilities, and ensured that all associates were aligned with his strategic objectives. His ability to combine operational oversight with strategic thinking allowed him to maintain control over complex enterprises without drawing undue attention, further solidifying his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain. Corozzo's rise in prominence was not limited to financial matters. He also became a key figure in mediating disputes, both within his own organization and between rival factions. Violence was always a possibility in these circles, but Corozzo preferred to resolve conflicts through negotiation and strategic compromise whenever possible. He understood that maintaining stability within the organization was essential for long-term success, and that unchecked violence could destabilize carefully constructed networks. His skill in reading people, understanding motivations, and predicting behavior allowed him to anticipate tensions before they escalated, positioning himself as an indispensable mediator. Allies and rivals alike came to recognize his ability to balance firmness with diplomacy, knowing that Corozzo could resolve issues efficiently while protecting the interests of those he represented. The period also saw Corozzo expanding his influence beyond traditional crime activities into areas where legal and illegal enterprises intersected. He cultivated relationships with business owners, union leaders, and influential community figures, using these connections to extend his reach and protect operations from scrutiny. By positioning himself at the intersection of these worlds, he created layers of protection and influence that were difficult for outsiders to penetrate. Corozzo's understanding of human behavior was key in this regard. He knew that trust, loyalty, and personal investment often outweighed fear when managing relationships, and he applied this knowledge consistently to strengthen his network. In doing so, he became not only a figure of authority within the underworld, but also a respected, if discreet, presence in the broader social and economic landscape of the city. Despite his careful planning, Corozzo faced constant challenges from both within and outside his organization: rivalries with other factions, law enforcement scrutiny, and internal disagreements required him to remain vigilant at all times. He approached these challenges with a combination of patience, intelligence, and calculated risk-taking. Unlike others who reacted impulsively or aggressively, Corozzo analyzed situations thoroughly before acting, considering both immediate outcomes and long-term implications. This strategic approach allowed him to navigate dangerous situations effectively, maintaining his position and protecting the interests of his associates. His ability to remain calm under pressure, assess threats accurately, and act decisively made him an invaluable figure to those who relied on his judgment. Corozzo's approach to leadership was marked by a careful balance of authority and discretion. He was respected for his intelligence, decisiveness, and fairness, qualities that reinforced loyalty among his associates and deterred potential adversaries. He was not a figure who sought to dominate through fear alone. Instead, he cultivated respect by demonstrating competence, reliability, and strategic foresight. This approach not only strengthened his influence, but also contributed to the stability of the broader organization. Those who worked with him understood that loyalty and trust were valued, and that careful, disciplined action would be rewarded. Corozzo's leadership style created a culture of accountability and prudence, ensuring that operations could continue effectively even under pressure. During this period, Corozzo also became increasingly adept at managing risk and anticipating legal challenges. He understood that law enforcement was an ever-present threat, and that careful planning, discretion, and strategic communication were essential to survival. He monitored legal developments, maintained lines of communication with allies who could provide information or influence, and ensured that all activities were structured to minimize exposure. His understanding of risk extended beyond legal concerns to include operational, financial, and interpersonal factors, reflecting a comprehensive approach to leadership. By maintaining vigilance in these areas, Corozzo was able to navigate a highly complex environment while preserving both his safety and the stability of the organization. Despite the dangers and pressures, Corozzo maintained a clear focus on long-term strategy. He understood that influence and success were not built on short-term gains or impulsive actions, but through careful planning, disciplined execution, and the cultivation of loyalty and trust. He invested time in mentoring younger associates, ensuring that knowledge, discipline, and strategic thinking were passed down, creating a pipeline of talent that could support the organization's longevity. His emphasis on mentorship and succession planning reflected a broader understanding of organizational dynamics, recognizing that power and influence are sustained not only through individual capability, but also through the cultivation of capable, reliable teams. As the 1980s drew to a close, Nicholas Corozzo's operations had become a model of efficiency, discretion, and strategic foresight. He had mastered the art of influence, balancing financial control, operational management, and human insight to maintain stability and extend reach. His careful approach allowed him to navigate rivalries, legal pressures, and internal challenges without resorting to reckless confrontation or unnecessary exposure. Corozzo's story during this period illustrates the importance of patience, intelligence, and disciplined execution in the pursuit of influence, demonstrating that true authority often lies not in spectacle or aggression, but in thoughtful planning, strategic relationships, and the ability to anticipate and respond to challenges effectively. Reflecting on Corozzo's actions during this era, the lesson becomes clear. Long-term success is rarely achieved through impulsive action or intimidation alone. Rather, it is cultivated through careful observation, strategic decision-making, and the consistent application of intelligence, discretion, and human understanding. By combining these elements, Corozzo created a foundation for influence that was durable, respected, and effective, providing a blueprint for navigating complex and high-risk environments. His life and choices during this time serve as a reminder that calculated patience, foresight, and the cultivation of trust and loyalty are among the most powerful tools for achieving lasting impact. As the 1980s drew to a close, Nicholas Corozzo had cemented his position as a key strategist and influential figure within New York's complex criminal landscape. By this point, he was no longer simply a rising operator behind the scenes. He had become a central orchestrator whose decisions could shape the balance of power across multiple factions. Corozzo's approach to influence was subtle yet effective. He understood that true control often came not from overt displays of force, but from the careful alignment of people, resources, and opportunities. In a world where volatility was constant and loyalties could shift in an instant, he relied on foresight, strategic patience, and an almost instinctive understanding of human behavior to maintain his authority. Those who interacted with him quickly learned that discretion, intelligence, and loyalty were valued far more than recklessness or ambition, and that Corozzo's decisions were always guided by a long-term vision rather than short-term gain. During this period, Corozzo's role in overseeing operations expanded significantly. He was deeply involved in the management of gambling networks, loan-sharking enterprises, and other revenue streams that sustained the organization. What distinguished him from many contemporaries was his ability to approach these activities with a combination of operational discipline and strategic insight. He ensured that profits were maximized without drawing unnecessary attention, that conflicts were contained before they escalated, and that associates operated according to clear rules and expectations, while others relied primarily on intimidation or brute force to maintain control. Corozzo relied on careful planning, communication, and negotiation. He understood that an organization's strength was not only in its ability to enforce its will, but also in its ability to anticipate challenges and respond proactively, a philosophy that would define his leadership style for decades. By the late 1980s, Corozzo's influence extended beyond day-to-day operations. He became a trusted advisor and mediator within the organization, called upon to resolve disputes that could have threatened stability or led to destructive infighting. His skill in reading people, assessing motivations, and predicting behavior allowed him to intervene effectively and discreetly, often resolving tensions before they became visible to outsiders. This ability to maintain internal equilibrium not only reinforced his own authority but also enhanced the overall resilience of the organization. Corozzo's reputation as a calm, strategic, and reliable figure made him indispensable to both allies and superiors, further solidifying his position as the shadow behind the curtain. Corozzo's strategic thinking also extended to the management of risk and legal exposure. By the late 1980s, law enforcement pressure on organized crime was intensifying, and Corozzo understood that careful planning and discretion were essential to survival. He monitored investigations, maintained lines of communication with trusted contact, and ensured that operations were structured to minimize vulnerability. Unlike those who acted impulsively or flaunted their power, Corozzo prioritized caution, using intelligence and observation to guide his decisions. This disciplined approach allowed him to maintain influence even as scrutiny increased, demonstrating a rare combination of resilience, foresight, and strategic acumen. His ability to navigate both internal and external pressures was a hallmark of his leadership, and contributed significantly to the organization's stability. Another defining aspect of Corozzo's influence was his capacity to cultivate loyalty and trust. He recognized that fear could enforce compliance, but respect and trust ensured sustained allegiance. He invested time and attention in the people around him, mentoring younger associates, reinforcing standards of behavior, and ensuring that individuals understood both their responsibilities and their value to the organization. This focus on relationships created a network of loyalty that extended far beyond transactional interactions, allowing Corozzo to maintain control in a volatile environment. Those who worked with him understood that competence, discretion, and loyalty were rewarded, and that careful adherence to rules was more valuable than aggressive ambition. This system of accountability and trust contributed to the long-term durability of the operations under his oversight. The late 1980s and early 1990s also marked a period of expansion and consolidation for Corozzo. He worked to strengthen connections between different factions, ensuring that alliances were reinforced and rivalries mitigated. His influence was exercised quietly, through negotiation, strategy, and subtle persuasion rather than open confrontation. He was adept at identifying emerging opportunities, assessing risks, and deploying resources in ways that enhanced both profitability and stability. In doing so, he became a central figure in maintaining the hierarchy and balance of power within the broader criminal network, a role that required both patience and foresight. Corozzo's ability to anticipate challenges, mediate disputes, and strategically allocate influence set him apart from many of his peers, ensuring that his position remained secure even amid shifting dynamics. Despite his growing authority, Corozzo remained acutely aware of the fragility inherent in his world. Rivalries could flare suddenly, alliances could dissolve without warning, and legal scrutiny could disrupt operations at any moment. He approached these challenges with a combination of vigilance, careful planning, and decisive action. He understood that maintaining control required constant attention, adaptability, and the ability to respond strategically to unforeseen developments. His approach was methodical, focusing on long-term stability rather than short-term victories, and emphasizing the importance of intelligence, discretion, and careful judgment. Corozzo's ability to operate effectively under pressure reinforced his reputation as a figure whose judgment was both reliable and indispensable. During this era, Corozzo also developed a nuanced understanding of the interplay between power and perception. He recognized that visibility could be both a liability and an asset, and he carefully calibrated his presence to maximize influence while minimizing risk. By remaining largely behind the scenes, he ensured that his authority was felt without drawing unnecessary attention, a strategy that enhanced both personal security and organizational stability. His ability to balance discretion with strategic action allowed him to maintain control over a wide range of operations and relationships, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of both human behavior and organizational dynamics. As Corozzo continued to solidify his position, he also focused on the importance of legacy and sustainability. He understood that influence was not only about immediate control, but also about the long-term durability of systems and relationships. By mentoring trusted associates, reinforcing loyalty, and structuring operations for resilience, he created a foundation that could endure beyond individual actions or changes in circumstance. His approach emphasized strategic thinking, foresight, and disciplined execution, demonstrating that lasting influence required more than ambition. It required careful cultivation, management of human and operational dynamics, and an unwavering focus on long-term objectives. The story of Nicholas Corozzo during this period illustrates the critical role of intelligence, discretion, and strategic foresight in navigating complex and high-risk environments. His ability to maintain authority, cultivate loyalty, manage risk, and resolve conflicts quietly but effectively provides a clear example of how influence can be exercised without reliance on brute force or impulsive action. Through careful observation, disciplined decision-making, and a deep understanding of human behavior, Corozzo shaped both his own trajectory and the broader dynamics of New York's criminal landscape. His story serves as a reminder that success in any high-stakes environment is built on patience, strategic thinking, and the ability to balance risk, relationships, and operational control with foresight and judgment. As the 1990s dawned, Nicholas Corozzo's influence within New York's organized crime circles had reached a level few could challenge. By this time, he was widely recognized not just as a capable operator, but as a strategic mind whose decisions could shape the balance of power across multiple criminal factions. The environment around him was more complex than ever, a network of alliances, rivalries, and shifting loyalties that required constant vigilance, foresight, and precise judgment. Corozzo's approach to leadership and influence was methodical. He understood that survival and success in this world depended not only on strength or intimidation, but on the careful orchestration of people, resources, and opportunities. Every action was measured, every decision weighed for both immediate consequences and long-term impact, a hallmark of his disciplined and strategic mind. During this period, one of Corozzo's primary challenges was managing rivalries within the broader criminal network. Competition for territory, revenue streams, and influence could quickly escalate into violence, threatening the stability he had spent years cultivating. Unlike those who reacted impulsively or relied solely on intimidation, Corozzo approached these rivalries with careful analysis and negotiation. He was adept at reading the intentions and motivations of others, identifying potential points of tension before they became open conflicts. This ability allowed him to intervene in a timely and strategic manner, diffusing disputes and maintaining balance without drawing undue attention to himself. His interventions were precise, subtle, and often invisible to outsiders, reinforcing his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain and further consolidating his authority within the underworld. The early 1990s also saw Corozzo expanding and refining the organization's operations. He had a keen understanding of both the financial and human components necessary to sustain and grow influence. Gambling networks, loan sharking operations, and other revenue-generating activities were carefully managed to maximize profit while minimizing risk. Corozzo emphasized operational discipline, ensuring that associates followed established protocols and that financial activities were monitored and controlled with precision. Unlike others who allowed greed or impulsivity to disrupt their enterprises, Corozzo maintained a disciplined, methodical approach that combined operational oversight with strategic foresight. His ability to balance immediate business needs with long-term stability set him apart as a figure of rare competence and reliability in an environment where unpredictability was constant. Corozzo's reputation for intelligence and discretion also made him a sought-after mediator for internal and external conflicts. Whether disputes arose within his own network or between rival factions, he had a unique ability to negotiate resolutions that maintained stability while advancing strategic objectives. His approach was neither aggressive nor confrontational. It relied on persuasion, subtle influence, and an understanding of human psychology. By identifying shared interests, mitigating threats, and leveraging relationships, he could resolve potentially explosive situations quietly and effectively. These interventions reinforced his authority, enhanced loyalty among his associates, and underscored the value of strategic thinking over brute force in navigating the high-stakes world of organized crime. During this era, Corozzo also demonstrated an extraordinary awareness of risk management. He understood that law enforcement scrutiny was intensifying and that operational mistakes or lapses in discretion could have immediate consequences. To counter these threats, he implemented careful oversight of activities, maintained communication channels with trusted allies, and structured operations to minimize exposure. His approach to risk was holistic, considering legal, financial, operational, and interpersonal factors in every decision. By anticipating challenges and preparing contingencies, Corozzo was able to sustain influence while avoiding pitfalls that had derailed the careers of many contemporaries. His strategic vigilance ensured that both he and the organization could continue operating with relative stability despite an increasingly complex environment. The personal dimension of Corozzo's leadership also played a critical role during this period. He understood that loyalty, trust, and human relationships were as essential to success as operational competence. He invested time in mentoring younger associates, reinforcing values of discretion, discipline, and strategic thinking, and ensuring that the organization could sustain itself across generations. By cultivating personal loyalty and professional respect, he created a network of individuals who were committed to maintaining stability, supporting operations, and preserving the organization's integrity. This human-centered approach complemented his operational acumen, making Corozzo a leader whose influence was both durable and respected, rooted in competence, foresight, and interpersonal skill, rather than fear alone. The early 1990s were also marked by Corozzo's increasing ability to anticipate and exploit opportunities within a shifting landscape. He recognized emerging trends, assessed potential risks, and positioned his influence to capitalize on changes in power, regulation, or market conditions. His strategy was never reactive. It was proactive, calculated, and deliberate. This foresight allowed him to expand his reach and solidify his authority, reinforcing his status as an indispensable figure within the underworld. Unlike many who were consumed by immediate challenges, Corozzo maintained a long-term perspective, focusing on sustainability, growth, and the careful cultivation of influence across multiple domains. Despite the apparent stability and control, Corozzo remained constantly aware of the dangers inherent in his world. Betrayal, rival ambitions, and unpredictable events were ever-present threats, and he approached these risks with caution, intelligence, and strategic planning. He was deliberate in both action and restraint, recognizing that impulsive decisions could unravel years of careful work. His ability to navigate these risks, while maintaining influence and operational stability, demonstrated a rare combination of intelligence, judgment, and discipline. Associates came to rely on his insight, knowing that his decisions were informed by careful analysis, experience, and a deep understanding of human behavior. Corozzo's influence during this period also reflected his understanding of perception and symbolism in leadership. He recognized that visibility could be both an asset and a liability and carefully calibrated his presence to maximize authority without attracting unnecessary scrutiny. By remaining largely behind the scenes, he ensured that his influence was felt broadly while minimizing personal exposure. This approach reinforced his image as a strategic, disciplined, and reliable figure, one whose judgment and decisions were respected even by those outside his immediate circle. His ability to balance discretion with effectiveness allowed him to operate with a level of freedom and security that few peers could match. As the 1990s progressed, Nicholas Corozzo's story illustrates the centrality of strategy, foresight, and disciplined execution in navigating complex and high-risk environments. His ability to manage rivalries, oversee operations, cultivate loyalty, mitigate risk, and leverage influence demonstrates a model of leadership that prioritizes intelligence, discretion, and sustainability over impulsive action or brute force. Through careful observation, meticulous planning, and the consistent application of insight into human behavior, Corozzo maintained authority, navigated challenges, and shaped outcomes in ways that reinforced both personal power and organizational stability. His life during this era is a testament to the importance of foresight, discipline, and strategic patience in achieving lasting influence, highlighting lessons that extend beyond the underworld to any complex, high-stakes environment where human behavior and organizational dynamics intersect. By the mid-1990s, Nicholas Corozzo had become a cornerstone of New York's organized crime world, a man whose influence and strategic foresight shaped decisions across multiple factions. He operated in a landscape marked by opportunity and danger, where a single misstep could destabilize entire networks. Yet Corozzo's approach was defined by careful calculation and an uncanny ability to anticipate both risk and reward. Unlike many of his contemporaries who relied on aggression or spectacle, he relied on intelligence, patience, and subtle maneuvering. His influence was never forced. It was woven through relationships, operations, and negotiation, creating a web of authority that was difficult to challenge and nearly impossible to dismantle without his consent. Those who encountered him quickly understood that while he spoke softly, his decisions carried weight, and his judgment commanded respect. During this period, Corozzo focused heavily on the expansion and refinement of his organization's operation. He oversaw a diverse portfolio of criminal enterprises, including gambling, loan sharking, and extortion, ensuring that each sector operated efficiently and securely. What set him apart was his insistence on discipline and oversight. He monitored operations with a precision that minimized exposure, while maximizing returns, always aware that law enforcement scrutiny was increasing. Every transaction, every relationship, and every alliance was evaluated for both opportunity and risk. Corozzo's operational philosophy was grounded in foresight. He understood that short-term gains achieved recklessly could destabilize long-term influence, and he avoided impulsive action in favor of careful, deliberate execution. This disciplined approach allowed him to sustain profitability, maintain loyalty, and protect both his position and the organization from potential disruption. Corozzo's strategic influence extended beyond operational control to the careful management of relationships within the criminal hierarchy. He understood that maintaining stability required a balance of authority, trust, and subtle negotiation. Rival factions, ambitious subordinates, and potential adversaries all required careful management, and Corozzo excelled at reading the intentions, ambitions, and fears of those around him. By addressing conflicts before they escalated, leveraging alliances strategically, and deploying influence quietly but effectively, he maintained the delicate equilibrium necessary for the organization's continued success. His reputation as a problem solver, mediator, and strategic mind became a defining feature of his leadership, making him both respected and feared across the underworld. One of the hallmarks of Corozzo's approach during this time was his emphasis on intelligence, gathering, and situational awareness. He recognized that information was a form of power, and that timely, accurate insight could determine the outcome of both operational and strategic decisions. Corozzo cultivated networks of informants, allies, and trusted contacts who provided him with critical intelligence. This allowed him to anticipate challenges, assess risks, and act decisively when opportunities or threats emerged. He was methodical in his approach, combining observational skill with careful analysis to ensure that decisions were well-informed and strategically sound. By leveraging intelligence effectively, Corozzo maintained a level of control and foresight that few of his contemporaries could match, further reinforcing his reputation as a shadowy but highly effective figure in the New York underworld. The mid-1990s also brought an increase in law enforcement pressure, with organized crime increasingly under scrutiny through investigations, indictments, and surveillance. Corozzo recognized the implications of this heightened attention and adapted his strategies accordingly. He emphasized operational security, limiting exposure, and maintaining a low profile while continuing to exert influence through trusted associates and carefully managed channels. Unlike others who reacted impulsively or sought confrontation, He relied on discretion, planning, and careful execution to navigate these challenges. His ability to balance operational needs with risk management demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both the criminal and legal environments, allowing him to sustain authority even in a climate of intensified scrutiny. During this period, Corozzo also deepened his focus on loyalty, mentorship within the organization. He understood that trust and respect were the cornerstones of stability, and he invested considerable energy in cultivating these qualities among his associates by mentoring younger members, reinforcing standards of behavior, and ensuring that loyalty was both earned and maintained. He created a network of individuals who were committed to the organization's success and capable of executing complex operations with reliability. This human-centered approach complemented his operational skill, enhancing the durability of his influence and ensuring that the organization could continue to function effectively even in the face of external pressures or internal challenges. Loyalty, for Corozzo, was not simply a matter of fear. It was a carefully nurtured bond rooted in respect, mutual interest, and shared understanding of the stakes involved. Corozzo's strategic vision extended beyond immediate operations to the long-term sustainability of the organization. He recognized that power was ephemeral without careful planning, and he dedicated attention to succession, contingency planning, and the reinforcement of organizational structures. By ensuring that the organization could function independently of any single individual, including himself, he protected both his legacy and the broader network from destabilization. This foresight reflected a deep understanding of both human and organizational dynamics, recognizing that influence is sustained not just through authority but through the careful cultivation of resilience, adaptability, and competence among those who operate within the system. Throughout this period, Corozzo's leadership style remained defined by discretion, intelligence, and strategic patience. He avoided unnecessary conflict, valued careful planning over impulsive action, and consistently relied on foresight, negotiation, and insight into human behavior to maintain influence. While others relied on visibility, intimidation, or aggression, Corozzo's approach was subtler, leveraging relationships, information, and calculated intervention to shape outcomes. This style of leadership not only reinforced his authority but also contributed to the overall stability of the criminal landscape in which he operated, demonstrating the enduring value of intelligence, patience, and strategic thinking in high-stakes environments. Despite the apparent control and influence he maintained, Corozzo remained keenly aware of the dangers inherent in his world. Betrayals, rival ambitions, legal pressures, and unforeseen events were constant threats that demanded vigilance and adaptability. He approached these risks with disciplined analysis, proactive planning, and careful execution, ensuring that both his position and the organization's stability were preserved. His ability to navigate these challenges effectively reinforced his reputation as a leader whose judgment was reliable and whose influence was pervasive, yet largely invisible to those outside the inner circle. The story of Nicholas Corozzo during the mid-1990s illustrates the enduring importance of strategic foresight, disciplined execution, and the careful cultivation of relationships in environments defined by risk and complexity. His ability to maintain authority, manage rivalries, oversee operations, mitigate risk, and sustain loyalty provides a model for navigating high-stakes situations with intelligence and discretion. Corozzo's life during this era serves as a testament to the power of patience, insight, and strategic thinking, demonstrating that lasting influence is achieved not through impulsive action or brute force, but through careful observation, meticulous planning, and the consistent application of judgment and human understanding. By the late 1990s, Nicholas Corozzo had fully established himself as one of the most formidable and respected figures in New York's criminal underworld. His rise was not marked by reckless aggression or flamboyant displays of power, but by calculated strategy, disciplined oversight, and an extraordinary understanding of human behavior. Corozzo had long mastered the art of influence, knowing that authority was not about fear alone, but about the subtle management of relationships, resources, and perception. In a world where loyalties were fragile and alliances could shift in an instant, his ability to anticipate the moves of others, maintain operational stability, and assert quiet authority made him indispensable. He had become the ultimate strategist, a figure whose presence was felt in every major decision, yet who remained largely invisible to the casual observer. During this period, Corozzo's influence extended across a wide array of operations. He oversaw gambling, loan sharking, extortion, and other revenue-generating enterprises with meticulous care, ensuring that each operation ran efficiently while minimizing exposure to law enforcement or rival interference. He had learned that chaos or impulsivity could destroy years of careful work, and he approached every activity with a level of discipline that few could match. By delegating responsibility to trusted associates while maintaining oversight and accountability, he created an organization that was both resilient and highly effective. Corozzo's operational approach combined strategic foresight, attention to detail, and an understanding of human behavior, allowing him to sustain profitability, loyalty, and influence without resorting to unnecessary confrontation or visibility. A critical element of Corozzo's success was his ability to manage rivalries and potential threats. By the late 1990s, the criminal landscape in New York was crowded with ambitious figures seeking power, and conflicts could escalate quickly if not addressed. Corozzo's approach was methodical. He monitored relationships, anticipated points of tension, and intervened with subtlety and precision. He understood that the perception of strength often mattered as much as the actual exercise of it, and he leveraged his reputation, intelligence, and strategic insight to resolve disputes before they became violent. Allies respected his judgment, rivals feared his influence, and even those outside his immediate network recognized the quiet authority he wielded. Through careful observation, negotiation, and timing, Corozzo maintained balance within a volatile environment, ensuring that his organization remained stable and effective. During this era, Corozzo also placed significant emphasis on mentorship and succession planning. He recognized that the long-term survival of the organization depended on cultivating capable, loyal associates who could manage operations and maintain the culture of discipline he'd instilled. By teaching younger members about discretion, strategic thinking, and the importance of loyalty, he ensured that his influence would extend beyond his personal involvement in day-to-day activities. This focus on mentorship reinforced the stability of the organization, created a culture of accountability, and allowed Corozzo to extend his influence without being directly involved in every decision. His approach highlighted the critical role of foresight and human management in sustaining power over the long term. At the same time, Corozzo continued to refine his understanding of risk and operational security. Law enforcement attention had intensified by this point, with surveillance, wiretaps, and federal investigations increasing the stakes for every decision. Corozzo adapted by structuring operations to minimize exposure, maintaining strict communication protocols, and relying on trusted intermediaries to shield himself from direct involvement whenever possible. He understood that survival depended on both foresight and adaptability, and he navigated these challenges with the same calm, analytical approach that had characterized his rise. His ability to anticipate investigations, plan contingencies, and manage operational security reinforced his reputation as a master strategist and further solidified his position within the underworld. The late 1990s also highlighted Corozzo's skill in maintaining influence across broader networks. He cultivated relationships not only within his immediate circle, but also with allied factions, business figures, and community influencers who could provide information, opportunities, or protection. By carefully managing these connections, he extended his reach without drawing attention to himself, creating a network of influence that was both broad and deep. Corozzo's approach emphasized subtlety, intelligence, and long-term planning. He understood that power was most effective when it could be exercised quietly, through leverage and persuasion, rather than through overt displays of force. This strategic subtlety became a defining characteristic of his leadership style and a key factor in his enduring success. Corozzo's approach to conflict and negotiation remained a central pillar of his strategy. He recognized that violent escalation could be costly, destabilizing, and counterproductive, and he therefore prioritized diplomacy, negotiation, and strategic intervention. He had a remarkable ability to assess motivations, anticipate actions, and identify mutually beneficial solutions that reinforced stability and enhanced his influence. In situations where confrontation was unavoidable, Corozzo exercised control and precision, ensuring that outcomes reinforced his authority and protected the organization. His ability to combine foresight, negotiation, and measured action allowed him to maintain influence, resolve disputes, and navigate the complex web of criminal alliances and rivalries that defined New York's underworld. Despite his operational success and growing influence, Corozzo never lost sight of the human dimension of leadership. He understood that trust, loyalty, and personal relationships were essential to maintaining stability and sustaining influence. By mentoring associates, reinforcing standards, and cultivating loyalty through respect and shared understanding, he created a network of individuals committed to the organization's success. This human-focused approach complemented his strategic and operational skills, ensuring that the organization could function effectively even amid pressures, threats, or unforeseen developments. Corozzo's leadership demonstrated that influence is not only a matter of authority or resources, but also a product of careful cultivation of human relationships, trust, and respect. As the decade progressed, Nicholas Corozzo's story exemplified the delicate balance between power, strategy, and discretion. He had mastered the art of exercising influence quietly but effectively, maintaining operational control while minimizing exposure, and navigating a complex environment with foresight, intelligence, and precision. His ability to anticipate challenges, manage rivalries, cultivate loyalty, and structure operations for long-term stability made him one of the most effective and respected figures of his era. Corozzo's approach emphasized strategic patience, disciplined execution, and the careful management of both human and operational dynamics, demonstrating that enduring influence is achieved not through impulsive action or aggression but through careful planning, observation, and thoughtful intervention. In reflecting on this period, it becomes clear that Nicholas Corozzo's leadership style was defined by intelligence, foresight, discretion, and a deep understanding of human behavior. His ability to maintain authority, manage risk, resolve conflicts, and sustain loyalty provided a model of strategic influence that extended far beyond his personal achievements. Corozzo's story during this era serves as a lesson in the power of patience, observation, and strategic thinking, highlighting the importance of intelligence, discretion, and careful human management in achieving lasting influence, stability, and success in complex, high-stakes environments. As the turn of the millennium approached, Nicholas Corozzo found himself navigating an increasingly complex landscape. The criminal underworld of New York had evolved, and with it came heightened scrutiny, rival ambitions, and a shifting balance of power. By this point, Corozzo had earned a reputation as a strategist who combined intelligence, patience, and foresight to maintain influence without unnecessary exposure. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he understood that the most effective authority often came not from overt displays of power, but from the quiet orchestration of people, relationships, and resources. His style was calculated, measured, and disciplined, allowing him to operate in a world defined by volatility and unpredictability, while maintaining a level of control that few could challenge. During this period, Corozzo's operational focus remained broad yet precise. He oversaw gambling networks, loan sharking operations, and revenue-generating enterprises with an almost surgical attention to detail. Every transaction, alliance, and negotiation was evaluated not just for immediate gain, but for long-term implication. He had learned over decades that impulsive decisions and unchecked ambition could destabilize entire networks, and he avoided both in favor of calculated, disciplined action. Delegation was key to his success, yet he retained oversight over critical operations, ensuring that both loyalty and operational efficiency were maintained. His approach created a resilient and highly effective organization, capable of sustaining influence and revenue even amid growing external pressures. By the late 1990s and into the early 2000s, pressure from law enforcement intensified. Federal investigations, surveillance, and organized crime task forces were becoming more sophisticated, and the environment for criminal operations had never been more dangerous. Corozzo responded not with panic, but with preparation and foresight. He implemented operational safeguards, ensured communication security, and relied on trusted intermediaries to reduce personal exposure. Corozzo's understanding of risk management extended beyond legal threats. He evaluated operational vulnerabilities, rival maneuvers, and potential internal weaknesses. His ability to anticipate challenges and structure contingencies allowed him to maintain influence and operational continuity, even under scrutiny that had derailed less disciplined leaders. He demonstrated that intelligence, planning, and discretion were more powerful than force when navigating a high-risk, high-pressure environment. Rivalries continued to pose challenges, yet Corozzo approached them with the same strategic patience that had defined his career. He had an exceptional ability to read human behavior, understand motivations, and anticipate actions. By intervening quietly and precisely, he was able to resolve disputes, prevent escalation, and maintain the delicate balance of alliances. Violence was always a possibility, but it was never his preferred tool. Instead, he relied on persuasion, leverage, and the strategic deployment of relationships. This approach not only reinforced his authority but also enhanced the stability of the broader network, demonstrating the enduring value of foresight, intelligence, and negotiation over impulsive aggression. During this era, Corozzo also focused heavily on cultivating loyalty and mentoring key associates. He understood that the long-term survival of the organization required capable, disciplined, and trusted individuals who could execute operations, maintain discretion, and uphold the cultural standards he had established. By teaching younger members the importance of patience, strategic thinking, and operational discipline, he created a network capable of sustaining itself even without his direct involvement in every decision. Loyalty for Corozzo was earned through trust, competence, and mutual interest, not fear alone. This human-centered approach reinforced operational stability, minimized internal risk, and ensured that influence could be maintained over the long term, even amid the pressures of increased law enforcement attention and shifting rivalries. Financial operations during this period also became increasingly sophisticated under Corozzo's oversight. He understood the importance of not only generating revenue but protecting it from exposure, risk, or interference. His management of gambling networks, loans, and other enterprises demonstrated an exceptional combination of strategic foresight and operational discipline. Corozzo carefully structured these operations to maximize efficiency and minimize vulnerabilities, ensuring that the organization remained profitable while avoiding pitfalls that could attract legal or rival attention. His methodical approach to both money and human capital reinforced his reputation as a figure of intelligence and discretion, someone whose judgment could be relied upon to navigate complex and dangerous circumstances. In addition to operational and financial management, Corozzo's strategic influence extended into broader social and organizational networks. He cultivated relationships with allied factions, business leaders, and influential community figures, creating a network of information, opportunity, and protection. These connections were deployed judiciously, ensuring that influence could be extended without unnecessary exposure. Corozzo understood that visibility was a liability as much as it could be an asset, and he carefully calibrated his presence to maximize authority while maintaining discretion. His ability to operate in multiple spheres simultaneously, leveraging relationships and information while remaining largely unseen, reinforced his enduring reputation as the shadow behind the curtain. The early 2000s also highlighted Corozzo's ability to balance crisis management with long-term strategic planning. In a world defined by unpredictability, his calm, analytical approach allowed him to address threats efficiently while preserving the integrity of the organization. He could anticipate challenges before they became crises, deploy resources effectively, implement solutions that reinforced both operational efficiency and strategic influence. This skill set allowed him to sustain authority, protect allies, and maintain the delicate equilibrium necessary for continued success. His leadership emphasized the importance of foresight, patience, and adaptability, demonstrating that power is most durable when exercised through careful observation and thoughtful intervention rather than through immediate confrontation or reaction. Corozzo's influence also extended to the broader culture of his organization. By emphasizing discretion, operational discipline, and loyalty, he created a framework in which associates were both motivated and accountable. He reinforced the importance of strategic thinking, teaching that individual action should always consider both immediate consequences and long-term implications. This philosophy fostered resilience within the organization, ensuring that it could endure external pressures and internal challenges alike. Corozzo's approach demonstrated that leadership is as much about shaping culture, expectations, and behavior as it is about managing operations or resources. Reflecting on this era, Nicholas Corozzo's story illustrates the interplay between intelligence, foresight, and strategic patience in high-stakes environments. His ability to manage risk, maintain loyalty, resolve conflicts, and oversee complex operations made him a central figure in New York's criminal landscape, even as law enforcement pressure and rival ambitions increased. Corozzo's success was not based on fear or impulsive action, but on careful observation, disciplined execution, and the consistent application of human insight. His story highlights the enduring importance of strategic thinking, operational oversight, and the cultivation of trust and loyalty in achieving lasting influence. By the early 2000s, Corozzo had demonstrated that sustained authority is built on a foundation of preparation, intelligence, and disciplined action. His approach to leadership, operational control, and risk management provided a model for navigating complex, high-risk environments with both resilience and strategic effectiveness. Corozzo's story serves as a reminder that influence is most enduring when it is exercised thoughtfully, that loyalty and trust are more powerful than fear, and that careful planning, observation, and human understanding are critical components of lasting success. By the mid-2000s, Nicholas Corozzo had entered a new and perilous phase of his life, one defined not just by influence and strategic oversight, but by the growing weight of legal pressure and scrutiny. After decades of operating behind the scenes, quietly orchestrating operations and maintaining the loyalty of associates, Corozzo now faced an environment in which the consequences of past decisions were becoming increasingly tangible. Law enforcement agencies had intensified their focus on organized crime, employing advanced surveillance, informants, and federal investigations to dismantle operations that had long appeared untouchable. For a man whose strength had always been discretion, intelligence, and strategic patience, this period tested both his skill and resilience. Corozzo's response to these pressures was consistent with his lifelong approach, calm, methodical, and strategic. He did not panic, nor did he attempt rash maneuvers that could expose him further. Instead, he relied on careful planning, calculated delegation, and the use of trusted intermediaries to shield himself from direct involvement in operations under investigation. His experience allowed him to anticipate potential points of vulnerability, adapt operational structures, and implement safeguards designed to protect both himself and the organization. While many in similar circumstances might have faltered under scrutiny, Corozzo maintained composure, demonstrating the value of foresight and disciplined execution in high-stakes situations. During this period, Corozzo also focused intensely on maintaining the loyalty and discipline of his associates. He understood that under the increasing pressure of investigations, uncertainty, fear, and ambition could create internal instability. By reinforcing the principles of discretion, accountability, and strategic thinking that had long guided the organization, he ensured that his network remained cohesive. Mentorship and guidance became even more critical. Younger members were taught not only operational procedures, but the importance of patience, observation, and the careful assessment of risk. Corozzo's leadership emphasized that survival and success were not achieved through impulsive action, but through calculated decisions, loyalty, and foresight, principles that had guided his rise and now became vital to his continued resilience. Financial operations during this period required careful attention and restructuring. Corozzo recognized that law enforcement scrutiny could disrupt even the most profitable enterprises if proper safeguards were not in place. He implemented measures to protect cash flow, limit exposure, and ensure that revenue-generating activities were insulated from direct links to his personal involvement. This operational discipline reflected not only his understanding of risk but also his strategic foresight, emphasizing sustainability and long-term viability over short-term gain. By carefully monitoring and managing both financial and human resources, Corozzo maintained operational continuity despite the increasing pressures surrounding him. Conflict management remained another pillar of his strategy. As investigations and pressures increased, rival factions and ambitious associates were more likely to challenge authority or exploit vulnerabilities. Corozzo relied on his keen understanding of human behavior, negotiation skills, and strategic leverage to mitigate these risks. He could anticipate potential disputes, intervene discreetly, and maintain the delicate balance of alliances necessary to preserve both authority and stability. Violence remained a tool of last resort, and Corozzo's emphasis on diplomacy, persuasion, and strategic intervention reinforced the long-term durability of his influence. His ability to navigate these challenges quietly, efficiently, and effectively underscored the depth of his strategic acumen. This period also highlighted the critical role of perception in Corozzo's leadership. He understood that visibility could attract scrutiny and risk, while subtle influence could command authority without exposure. By managing his public and operational profile carefully, he ensured that his power was recognized where it mattered but remained shielded from unnecessary attention. This strategic subtlety allowed him to maintain control and influence over operations and relationships, even as law enforcement efforts intensified. His ability to balance discretion with effective action was a hallmark of his leadership, distinguishing him from those who relied on aggression, visibility, or impulsive decisions. As legal pressures mounted, Corozzo's resilience and strategic mindset became even more apparent. He evaluated each challenge not as a threat to provoke panic, but as an opportunity to exercise judgment, reinforce discipline, and maintain control. Every decision was assessed for its immediate impact and long-term consequences, reflecting his understanding that leadership, influence, and survival were interconnected. By relying on careful observation, intelligence, and foresight, he was able to sustain both personal authority and the stability of the organization, demonstrating the enduring importance of strategic patience in high-risk environments. Corozzo's story during this period also reflects the critical importance of mentorship and succession planning under pressure, recognizing that personal involvement in operations could increase risk. He relied increasingly on trusted associates to execute tasks, while reinforcing the principles of loyalty, discretion, and strategic thought. This human-focused approach ensured that operations continued efficiently, even under scrutiny, and that the organization's influence remained intact. Corozzo's emphasis on leadership development, accountability, and risk management allowed him to extend his authority without unnecessary exposure, highlighting the interplay between operational control and human relationships in sustaining influence. Financial strategy, operational management, and human oversight were complemented by Corozzo's ability to maintain strategic alliances across a broader network. He cultivated relationships with allied factions, business leaders, and influential figures, leveraging these connections to enhance both security and operational opportunities. By deploying influence selectively and strategically, he maintained a degree of freedom and authority that protected him from the immediate consequences of intensified law enforcement attention. Corozzo's ability to navigate multiple spheres of influence, simultaneously financial, operational, and interpersonal, demonstrated a level of strategic sophistication that few peers could match, reinforcing his reputation as a master of subtle yet powerful authority. Despite the pressures of this era, Corozzo's leadership remained rooted in core principles that had guided him throughout his career: intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight. He emphasized observation over impulse, planning over reaction, and loyalty over fear, creating an environment in which associates could operate confidently and reliably even under stress. His ability to combine operational discipline, human insight, and long-term vision allowed him to maintain stability, influence, and profitability, even as external pressures intensified. Corozzo's resilience under scrutiny illustrates the enduring value of strategic thinking and disciplined leadership in high-stakes environments. By the mid-2000s, Nicholas Corozzo's story was defined not only by decades of influence, but also by the challenges of maintaining authority in a world increasingly hostile to the operations he had cultivated. His approach, strategic, disciplined, and discreet, allowed him to navigate scrutiny, manage risk, and preserve the cohesion of his organization. Corozzo's leadership demonstrated that enduring influence is built on intelligence, patience, operational discipline, and the careful cultivation of human relationships. His story during this period highlights the importance of foresight, resilience, and strategic thinking, providing lessons that extend far beyond the underworld, that careful observation, disciplined execution, and the cultivation of trust and loyalty are fundamental to achieving lasting impact in any high-stakes environment. As the mid-2000s unfolded, Nicholas Corozzo confronted a new and formidable set of challenges that tested both his strategic acumen and personal resilience. Law enforcement scrutiny had reached an unprecedented level, and the world in which he had quietly wielded influence for decades was increasingly exposed to modern investigative tools, federal pressure, and informants who threatened to dismantle long-standing networks. For a man whose strength had always been discretion, intelligence, and careful orchestration, this period demanded not only operational foresight, but also psychological resilience. Corozzo's ability to adapt, plan, and maintain composure became as critical as any of the operations he had managed over the previous decades. He understood that survival in this new landscape required more than just influence. It required patience, adaptability, and the capacity to manage both perception and reality simultaneously. During this period, Corozzo focused intensely on operational restructuring and risk mitigation. He evaluated the organization's revenue streams, identifying areas where exposure could be minimized and processes streamlined to avoid attracting attention. His management of gambling operations, loans, and other enterprises reflected an almost surgical precision. Every decision was weighed for both immediate and long-term consequences, and delegation was employed strategically to maintain both efficiency and security. Trusted intermediaries executed tasks, but oversight remained thorough, ensuring that loyalty, competence, and operational discipline were maintained even in the absence of Corozzo's direct involvement. The balance he struck between delegation and control highlighted his enduring mastery of organizational leadership under pressure. Internal stability became an equally pressing concern during this period. Corozzo recognized that fear, uncertainty, and ambition could erode loyalty or spark conflict if not carefully managed. He invested time in mentoring key associates, reinforcing the principles of discretion, accountability, and strategic thinking that had guided the organization for decades. By cultivating competence and trust among his network, he ensured that the organization could withstand external pressure without internal collapse. This approach emphasized the human element of leadership, demonstrating that operational success is as dependent on relationships, loyalty, and trust as it is on strategy and resources. Corozzo's ability to maintain cohesion and morale under heightened scrutiny reflected his deep understanding of human behavior and organizational dynamics. Corozzo also continued to rely heavily on intelligence gathering and situational awareness. He understood that information was a form of power, and timely, accurate insight could make the difference between stability and chaos. Trusted contacts, strategic alliances, and careful observation allowed him to anticipate challenges, identify vulnerabilities, and act preemptively to protect both his authority and the organization's interests. Corozzo's strategic foresight was rooted in decades of experience. He could analyze patterns, predict behavior, and develop contingency plans with a level of precision few could match. His decisions were rarely reactive. They were the product of careful deliberation, insight, and a long-term perspective designed to maintain influence and minimize risk. Financial management during this era required exceptional care. Corozzo had long understood that profitable operations were vulnerable not only to law enforcement but also to mismanagement or betrayal. He implemented safeguards to protect cash flow, ensure accountability, and prevent exposure of critical activities. By maintaining operational discipline and oversight, he minimized vulnerability and ensured that the organization could continue functioning effectively even under heightened pressure. His approach to financial operations reflected both strategic foresight and operational intelligence, demonstrating that discipline, organization, and long-term thinking were as crucial as revenue generation in sustaining influence. Rivalries and potential conflicts remained ever-present threats. Corozzo's ability to manage these situations with subtlety and precision became increasingly important. He evaluated the intentions, capabilities, and vulnerabilities of both allies and adversaries, intervening strategically to prevent disputes from escalating. Negotiation leverage and the careful application of authority allowed him to maintain stability without resorting to open confrontation. Violence was never his first choice. Instead, he emphasized foresight, diplomacy, and tactical intervention to achieve desired outcomes. This methodical, strategic approach reinforced his authority while preserving the organization's cohesion and long-term stability. Corozzo's skill in managing perception was equally crucial during this time. He understood that visibility could attract risk, while discreet influence allowed him to maintain authority without exposing himself unnecessarily. By calibrating his presence and relying on trusted intermediaries, he could exert control across multiple operations while remaining largely shielded from scrutiny. This balance between influence and discretion was a hallmark of his leadership, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of both human behavior and organizational dynamics. Corozzo's ability to operate quietly yet effectively underlined his reputation as a strategist whose judgment and authority could not be easily challenged. As legal pressures intensified, Corozzo also emphasized succession planning and organizational resilience. He recognized that personal vulnerability could not compromise the survival of the network he had spent decades building. Mentorship, loyalty cultivation, and disciplined operational management ensured that the organization could continue functioning efficiently even in his absence or under direct pressure. By fostering capable, trusted associates, he created a system in which authority and operational competence were distributed strategically, ensuring continuity and minimizing risk. This approach underscored the importance of foresight and human resource management in sustaining influence and stability over the long term. Despite these challenges, Corozzo's core principles remained unchanged. Intelligence, discretion, strategic patience, and human insight continued to guide his decisions, providing a foundation for both resilience and operational effectiveness. He demonstrated that authority is most durable when exercised thoughtfully, that loyalty and trust are more powerful than fear, and that careful planning and observation can protect influence even under intense pressure. Corozzo's leadership during this period was not about overt dominance or visibility. It was about control, foresight, and the ability to navigate complex, high-stakes situations with both discipline and subtlety. By the late 2000s, Nicholas Corozzo's story illustrates the enduring importance of strategic thinking, operational discipline, and human-centered leadership. His ability to manage risk, oversee complex operations, maintain loyalty, and anticipate challenges allowed him to navigate an increasingly hostile environment with skill and composure. Corozzo's experience during this period serves as a testament to the power of foresight, preparation, and adaptability, highlighting lessons that extend beyond the criminal world to any context where high stakes, human dynamics, and operational complexity intersect. His story demonstrates that lasting influence is built on intelligence, patience, and careful cultivation of both people and systems. Ultimately, Chapter 10 highlights a pivotal moment in Corozzo's life, where decades of experience, discipline, and strategic insight were tested against the realities of modern law enforcement, internal pressures, and the complexities of sustaining influence. His ability to navigate these challenges quietly yet effectively reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a man whose authority was felt throughout the underworld without being ostentatiously displayed. Corozzo's resilience, foresight, and commitment to operational and human excellence serve as enduring lessons in leadership, strategy, and the careful balance of influence in high-risk environments. By the late 2000s, Nicholas Corozzo's world had grown increasingly precarious. After decades of operating with intelligence, discretion, and strategic foresight, he now faced unprecedented legal scrutiny that threatened not only his freedom, but the stability of the entire network he had carefully built. Law enforcement agencies were relentless, utilizing sophisticated surveillance techniques, undercover operations, and federal investigations aimed at dismantling organized crime operations that had once seemed untouchable. Corozzo had spent a lifetime minimizing exposure, delegating critical tasks, and maintaining loyalty among his associates. But now the reality of external pressure tested the limits of his strategic patience and operational skill. He understood that even minor mistakes could carry significant consequences, and that his survival depended as much on foresight and adaptability as on influence and authority. During this period, Corozzo's approach to leadership became even more methodical and calculated. He evaluated the organization's operations with a level of scrutiny born from necessity. Gambling networks, loans, and other enterprises required restructuring to minimize risk and maintain profitability. He employed trusted intermediaries to handle sensitive operations, while keeping oversight and control firmly in his own hands. This balance of delegation and supervision reflected his understanding that no individual, not even himself, was immune from the vulnerabilities posed by increased legal scrutiny. Corozzo's ability to maintain operational continuity under these pressures underscored both his intelligence and the discipline that had defined his rise within the underworld. Internal stability remained a critical concern. Under pressure, fear and uncertainty could quickly fracture loyalty, and ambitious associates might see opportunity in perceived weakness. Corozzo focused on maintaining cohesion, reinforcing standards of discretion, accountability, and strategic thinking. Mentorship and guidance were emphasized, particularly for younger members who were expected to carry forward the principles and operations of the organization without creating exposure. By instilling a culture of loyalty, patience, and operational discipline, he ensured that even amid mounting legal and external pressures, the network remained intact and functional. Corozzo's human-centered approach to leadership demonstrated that the management of people was as crucial as the management of operations when navigating high-stakes situations. Strategic foresight was at the core of Corozzo's survival strategy. He understood that anticipation of challenges and careful planning could prevent crises before they emerged. By analyzing the movements of law enforcement, evaluating rival factions, and monitoring the internal dynamics of his organization, he could preemptively address vulnerabilities. Contingency plans were developed, operations were adapted, and sensitive tasks were reassigned to mitigate exposure. This proactive approach reflected decades of experience and a deep understanding of risk management. Corozzo's decisions were rarely impulsive. Every move was calculated to protect both personal authority and the long-term stability of the organization. In a landscape defined by unpredictability, his calm, deliberate, and analytical style became a defining feature of his leadership. Financial management during this period required exceptional attention. Law enforcement and internal vulnerabilities posed threats to revenue streams, necessitating precise oversight. Corozzo implemented measures to protect cash flow, monitor compliance among associates, and safeguard operations from direct association with his personal involvement. This strategic discipline ensured that the organization remained profitable while minimizing legal exposure. By combining operational foresight with meticulous attention to financial integrity, Corozzo maintained control and stability even in an era of increasing uncertainty. His approach highlighted the interplay between operational intelligence, human oversight, and strategic management in sustaining influence under pressure. Managing rivalries and potential conflicts remained a delicate and essential aspect of Corozzo's strategy. Ambitious individuals, both within and outside the organization, were constantly assessing opportunities to expand influence or exploit weaknesses. Corozzo relied on his deep understanding of human behavior, negotiation skills, and leverage to manage these dynamics without unnecessary violence. By anticipating disputes, intervening discreetly, and resolving potential conflicts through strategic mediation, he preserved the balance of power and reinforced loyalty within the network. His ability to maintain stability under pressure illustrated the enduring value of diplomacy, patience, and calculated influence over impulsive aggression. Corozzo's mastery of perception continued to play a pivotal role. He recognized that visibility could invite risk, while subtle strategic influence allowed him to command authority without unnecessary exposure. By calibrating his public and operational presence, he maintained control across multiple domains, while remaining largely shielded from direct scrutiny. This combination of influence and discretion was central to his leadership style, allowing him to operate effectively despite the heightened pressures of legal investigations and shifting alliances. Corozzo's ability to exert power quietly yet decisively reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose authority was felt widely without being overtly displayed. During this period, Corozzo also emphasized the importance of mentorship and succession planning. With personal exposure increasing, he relied more heavily on trusted associates to manage operations, while ensuring that these individuals were capable, loyal, and disciplined. By fostering competence and trust, he created a system in which influence was distributed strategically, minimizing vulnerability and ensuring operational continuity. This approach reflected both strategic foresight and a recognition that enduring authority depends on the resilience and capability of those who carry forward the organization's mission. Corozzo's emphasis on human capital demonstrated the intersection of leadership, mentorship, and strategic planning in sustaining influence under pressure. Despite the growing threats, Corozzo's core principles remained unchanged: intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight. These qualities guided every decision, every operational adjustment, and every interpersonal negotiation. By relying on observation, analysis, and calculated intervention, he preserved authority, operational efficiency, and loyalty, even amid escalating scrutiny. Corozzo's story during this period demonstrates that true influence is sustained not through intimidation or impulsive action, but through careful planning, insight, and the consistent application of strategic judgment. His leadership exemplified the enduring value of calm, informed decision-making in high-stakes environments. By the late 2000s, Nicholas Corozzo's life illustrates the profound challenges of sustaining influence under intense pressure. Law enforcement scrutiny, internal dynamics, and operational risk converge to create a landscape fraught with potential hazards. Yet through careful planning, strategic delegation, loyalty cultivation, and disciplined management, he maintained authority, operational continuity, and organizational cohesion. His story during this era highlights lessons in resilience, foresight, and strategic patience, demonstrating that enduring influence is built on intelligence, discretion, human understanding, and meticulous operational oversight. Ultimately, Chapter 11 presents a portrait of Nicholas Corozzo as a master strategist navigating a perilous environment. His ability to balance operational control, risk management, human relationships, and strategic foresight allowed him to maintain influence and authority even when facing unprecedented legal and organizational pressures. The lessons from this period extend beyond the underworld, illustrating the importance of careful planning, disciplined execution, and the cultivation of trust and loyalty in achieving lasting impact in any high-stakes arena. By the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo faced a landscape unlike any he had previously encountered. The New York underworld, once dominated by discreet influence and careful orchestration, had transformed under the combined pressures of law enforcement advancements, federal investigations, and the evolving ambitions of younger, more aggressive figures. For a man whose strength had always been rooted in patience, intelligence, and strategic subtlety, this period demanded a recalibration of approach, a careful balancing act between maintaining authority, protecting the organization, and navigating an increasingly hostile environment. Corozzo had long understood that survival depended not just on influence but on foresight, adaptability, and the consistent application of operational discipline. Operationally, Corozzo became even more meticulous. Revenue-generating activities such as gambling, loan sharking, and other enterprises required heightened oversight and reorganization to minimize exposure. Trusted intermediaries were relied upon to handle transactions, while Corozzo himself maintained control through careful monitoring and strategic guidance. Every decision was evaluated not only for its immediate outcome but for long-term implications, reflecting a level of strategic foresight that had become his trademark. By delegating operational responsibility without relinquishing authority, he maintained stability, loyalty, and operational efficiency, even under the increasing pressure of federal scrutiny. The organization's resilience during this period was a direct result of his disciplined, methodical approach. The human element of leadership became especially critical during these years. As investigations intensified and fear spread, the risk of betrayal, ambition-fueled conflict, or operational lapses increased dramatically. Corozzo focused on reinforcing loyalty, discipline, and strategic awareness among his associates. Mentorship was not merely about teaching operational tasks. It was about instilling the principles of discretion, foresight, and patience that had defined the organization for decades. By ensuring that key associates were both competent and loyal, he maintained cohesion, preventing internal fractures that could have compounded external threats. Corozzo's leadership during this period highlighted the enduring importance of trust, human insight, and organizational culture in maintaining influence under extreme pressure. Risk management and strategic foresight were cornerstones of Corozzo's approach. He carefully assessed every potential threat, from legal exposure to rival ambitions, and implemented proactive measures to mitigate vulnerabilities. Contingency plans were developed for operational disruptions, legal challenges, and unexpected internal conflicts. Corozzo's ability to anticipate scenarios before they materialized reflected decades of experience and a profound understanding of human behavior, organizational dynamics, and the intersection of risk and opportunity. Decisions were calculated, precise, and deliberate. Reactive or impulsive action was avoided in favor of careful planning and strategic positioning. His capacity to navigate uncertainty with intelligence and composure reinforced both his authority and the resilience of the organization. Financial operations remained under careful scrutiny during this period. Corozzo implemented measures to protect cash flow, reduce exposure, and ensure accountability among associates. Revenue streams were monitored closely, with sensitive operations delegated to trusted individuals to minimize risk while maintaining profitability. This financial discipline, combined with operational foresight, allowed the organization to sustain stability even as external pressures intensified. Corozzo's meticulous approach underscored the principle that operational success and influence are inseparable from strategic management, human oversight, risk mitigation. Conflict resolution continued to define Corozzo's influence. The increasing volatility of the underworld, coupled with heightened law enforcement attention, made diplomacy, negotiation, and strategic intervention more critical than ever. He assessed the motivations and intentions of rivals and allies alike, intervening discreetly to prevent disputes from escalating. Violence, though always a tool available, was rarely employed. Instead, Corozzo relied on leverage, persuasion, and timing to maintain balance and authority. This approach preserved operational stability and reinforced loyalty while minimizing unnecessary risk, demonstrating that strategic influence is most effective when combined with foresight, human insight, and subtle execution. Perception management remained a key component of Corozzo's strategy. Visibility could attract danger, while discreet, strategic influence allowed authority to be exercised without undue exposure. He calibrated his interactions, communication, and involvement to maintain control while reducing vulnerability. This careful management of presence and perception allowed him to navigate the increasing pressures of legal scrutiny and internal dynamics effectively. By remaining largely in the shadows yet maintaining decisive influence, Corozzo embodied the very essence of strategic subtlety, a hallmark of his enduring reputation as a masterful orchestrator of complex operations. Mentorship and succession planning were emphasized more than ever. Corozzo understood that the long-term survival of the organization required capable, loyal, and disciplined associates who could manage operations independently. By cultivating trust, competence, and strategic awareness among his inner circle, he ensured that the network could continue functioning effectively even under heightened external pressure. This distribution of authority and responsibility minimized vulnerability, strengthened cohesion, and preserved operational continuity. Corozzo's approach to human capital demonstrated that the resilience of an organization depends not only on system and strategy but also on the development of capable individuals who share its principles and priorities. Despite the growing pressures, Corozzo maintained his core principle: intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight. These values guided his decisions, shaped his interactions, and underpinned his operational and leadership strategies. Even in the face of intensified investigations and internal pressures, he relied on observation, analysis, and calculated action rather than impulsive decisions or displays of force. Corozzo's ability to combine operational discipline, human insight, and long-term planning allowed him to maintain influence, stability, and profitability in an environment defined by volatility and risk. His story during this period illustrates the enduring importance of strategy, patience, and foresight in high-stakes leadership. By the early 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life had entered a period of reflection and adjustment. While his authority remained significant, the challenges of maintaining operational control under persistent external pressure required constant adaptation. He balanced risk, influence, and loyalty, ensuring that the organization remained intact and functional despite the intensifying environment. Corozzo's ability to navigate these challenges quietly, strategically, and effectively reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose authority was pervasive yet subtly exercised, whose influence endured despite the growing pressures of legal scrutiny and shifting criminal landscapes. Chapter 12 underscores Corozzo's enduring mastery of leadership under pressure. His story during this period demonstrates that influence is sustained not through fear or impulsive action, but through intelligence, foresight, disciplined management, and the careful cultivation of loyalty and human relationships. Corozzo's ability to maintain operational stability, manage risk, and navigate complex challenges provides lessons in resilience, strategy, and leadership that extend far beyond the underworld. His example illustrates that lasting authority is achieved through preparation, strategic patience, and the consistent application of human insight in combination with operational discipline. Ultimately, this chapter captures a pivotal era in Nicholas Corozzo's life, when decades of experience, intelligence, and strategic judgment were tested against a rapidly evolving and hostile environment. His ability to protect the organization, maintain loyalty, and sustain influence amid legal scrutiny highlights the enduring value of foresight, discipline, and careful human management. Corozzo's story during this period serves as a testament to the power of strategic thinking, patient execution, and the cultivation of trust in navigating high-stakes situations, offering lessons that are as relevant to leadership and strategy as they are to the history of organized crime. By the early 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo found himself confronting the most significant challenges of his life, the culmination of decades spent navigating New York's criminal underworld. The pressures he now faced were unprecedented, combining intensified federal investigations, the proliferation of surveillance technology, and the increasing ambitions of both allies and rivals. What had once been an environment in which discretion, intelligence, and careful orchestration could protect a man's influence now required constant adaptation and strategic foresight at an extraordinary level. Corozzo's experience, patience, and calculated approach were tested as never before, revealing the full measure of his resilience and the depth of his strategic mastery. Operational management became increasingly complex under these conditions. Revenue-generating activities from gambling networks to loans and other enterprises required restructuring to minimize legal exposure while maintaining profitability. Corozzo relied on trusted associates to execute tasks with precision and discretion, while he oversaw operations from a strategic distance, ensuring that all activities adhered to rigorous standards. Each decision was analyzed not only for immediate consequences but also for long-term sustainability and risk mitigation. Delegation was essential, yet oversight remained meticulous. Corozzo's ability to balance operational control with delegation exemplified his skill in managing complex systems under extraordinary pressure, and it became a hallmark of his leadership during this critical period. Internal cohesion was another pressing concern. Under increased scrutiny, fear, uncertainty, and ambition could destabilize even the most disciplined networks. Corozzo focused on mentoring and guiding his key associates, emphasizing the principles of loyalty, discretion, and strategic thinking that had long defined the organization. By cultivating trust, competence, and accountability, he ensured that the network remained cohesive and resilient despite the external pressures. His leadership approach demonstrated a profound understanding of human behavior, showing that influence and authority are maintained as much through relationships and culture as through operational control. Loyalty, once earned, was reinforced through consistent guidance and the careful management of expectations. The management of risk became central to Corozzo's strategy. He understood that every decision carried weight, and that exposure to federal investigations could jeopardize both himself and the organization. By anticipating potential threats, implementing contingencies, and structuring operations to reduce direct connections to himself, he minimized vulnerability while maintaining influence. Corozzo's decisions were always deliberate and calculated, reflecting decades of experience and a deep understanding of both operational and human factors. He did not react impulsively to crises. Instead, he assessed, planned, and executed strategies designed to protect both the network and its leadership. His foresight and discipline allowed him to maintain authority even as external pressures reached their peak. Financial operations required extraordinary attention during this period. Corozzo implemented safeguards to ensure accountability, maintain revenue streams, and protect cash flow from exposure. Strategic delegation of financial tasks allowed the organization to function efficiently while minimizing direct risk to him. By combining operational oversight with meticulous financial management, he preserved the organization's stability and profitability, demonstrating that long-term success relies on careful planning, disciplined execution, and attention to both human and operational dynamics. Corozzo's approach illustrated that influence is not just about control, but about the consistent and disciplined management of resources, relationships, and risk. Conflict resolution remained a critical aspect of Corozzo's leadership. The pressures of heightened law enforcement activity and internal ambition made disputes inevitable. Yet he navigated these situations with intelligence and subtlety. By analyzing motivations, assessing leverage, and intervening strategically, he prevented conflicts from escalating while reinforcing loyalty and maintaining authority. Violence, while ever present in the underworld, was used sparingly and strategically. Corozzo relied primarily on negotiation, timing, and calculated influence. His ability to manage potential conflicts quietly yet effectively preserved both operational continuity and organizational cohesion, highlighting the sophistication of his strategic thinking and the value of restraint. Corozzo's mastery of perception continued to play a pivotal role. He recognized that visibility could create risk while quiet strategic influence allowed him to maintain authority without unnecessary exposure. By managing his presence and interactions with precision, he extended his influence across multiple operations and relationships while remaining largely shielded from scrutiny. This careful balance between authority and discretion became essential as legal pressure intensified, demonstrating his ability to exercise control effectively in an environment where every move could have significant consequences. Corozzo's subtlety reinforced his reputation as a figure whose influence was pervasive, yet quietly wielded, earning him the moniker "the shadow behind the curtain." During this period, mentorship and succession planning were more important than ever. With personal exposure increasing, Corozzo relied on trusted associates to manage operations while ensuring they possessed the skills, loyalty, and discipline necessary to uphold organizational standards. This approach allowed authority and operational responsibility to be distributed strategically, minimizing vulnerability and ensuring continuity. By cultivating capable and dependable associates, he strengthened the network's resilience and preserved its long-term stability. Corozzo's focus on human capital demonstrated that enduring influence depends on both strategic planning and the careful development of people capable of executing and sustaining an organization's vision. Despite the mounting pressures, Corozzo's guiding principles, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight, remained constant. These values informed every decision, shaped every interaction, and ensured the organization's survival under extraordinary scrutiny. By relying on observation, analysis, and deliberate intervention, he maintained authority and operational control while minimizing risk. Corozzo's leadership demonstrated that true influence is achieved through discipline, planning, human insight, and the consistent application of strategy rather than through fear, impulsivity, or visible displays of power. His resilience during this era exemplifies the enduring importance of patience, foresight, and calculated decision-making in high-stakes environments. By the early 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo had entered a period where the lessons of decades became vital for survival. Legal pressures, operational complexities, and the ambitions of both allies and rivals created a challenging landscape that tested every aspect of his leadership. Yet through careful oversight, disciplined operational management, strategic delegation, and the cultivation of loyalty, Corozzo maintained his influence and preserved the organization's cohesion. His ability to navigate these challenges quietly, strategically, and effectively solidified his reputation as a master strategist whose authority was felt throughout the network without being ostentatiously displayed. Chapter 13 captures a critical phase in Nicholas Corozzo's life, a period where the combination of intense scrutiny, operational complexity, and internal dynamics demanded the highest level of strategic intelligence and resilience. His ability to protect the organization, maintain authority, and guide associates through a volatile environment highlights the enduring importance of foresight, disciplined execution, and human management in sustaining influence. Corozzo's story serves as a testament to the power of strategic thinking, careful planning, and patience in navigating high-stakes situations, offering lessons in leadership, resilience, and the subtle exercise of authority that extend far beyond the world of organized crime. By the early 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's world had entered a phase defined by both heightened danger and profound strategic calculation. Decades of influence in New York's underworld had provided him with the knowledge, patience, and operational insight necessary to navigate complex criminal networks, but the relentless pressures of law enforcement now tested the limits of his skill. Federal investigations were more sophisticated than ever, utilizing surveillance technology, informants, and legal strategies designed to dismantle even the most disciplined operation. For Corozzo, the stakes were no longer just financial or operational, they were personal, organizational, and existential. The ability to maintain control, preserve the organization, and protect his own freedom required a level of strategic foresight and adaptability that few could match. Operational management during this period demanded unprecedented attention. Revenue streams, including gambling operations, loan networks, and other enterprises, needed to be carefully restructured to reduce legal exposure while maintaining profitability. Corozzo delegated execution to trusted associates, relying on them to handle sensitive transactions with precision, discretion, and loyalty. Yet he retained meticulous oversight, ensuring that every action aligned with strategic goals and risk management principles. His decisions were deliberate and calculated, designed to protect both the immediate operations and the long-term stability of the organization. The balance he struck between delegation and supervision became essential, demonstrating that the strength of leadership lies in both trust and vigilance. Internal cohesion became increasingly critical as fear and uncertainty spread among associates. Corozzo recognized that under heightened pressure, even minor cracks in loyalty could escalate into significant threats to organizational stability. To counter this, he emphasized mentorship, guidance, and the reinforcement of core principles: loyalty, discretion, accountability, and strategic foresight. Associates were not only trained in operational execution but also in the philosophy of patient, intelligent decision-making. Corozzo understood that the survival of the organization depended on the discipline, competence, and loyalty of its members. By fostering these qualities, he maintained cohesion and resilience, ensuring that the organization could withstand both external scrutiny and internal challenges. Risk management and foresight were central to every decision Corozzo made during this period. He meticulously evaluated potential vulnerabilities, legal threats, and rival activities, implementing proactive strategies to mitigate risk. Contingency planning became a cornerstone of his approach, ensuring that operations could continue even if certain elements were compromised. Corozzo's decisions were never impulsive. Each was based on careful assessment, experience, and an understanding of both human behavior and systemic dynamics. His ability to anticipate challenges and structure responses in advance allowed him to preserve authority and operational continuity despite an environment increasingly hostile to criminal enterprise. Financial operations were under particularly intense scrutiny, necessitating precise management and oversight. Corozzo implemented safeguards to protect cash flow, maintain accountability, and ensure that revenue-generating activities remained insulated from direct association with his personal involvement. Delegation of financial management to trusted associates allowed him to reduce risk while maintaining operational efficiency. By carefully monitoring and structuring these operations, he ensured that the organization's profitability continued even under heightened external pressure. Corozzo's meticulous approach underscored the principle that sustainable influence requires both disciplined oversight and strategic foresight in managing resources. Conflict resolution became a delicate and essential aspect of leadership. With law enforcement pressure increasing and rival ambitions growing, disputes were inevitable. Corozzo managed these conflicts with intelligence, patience, and strategic leverage. He evaluated the motivations, vulnerabilities, and intentions of all parties involved, intervening discreetly to prevent escalation. Violence, while ever present in the underworld, was rarely the preferred solution. Instead, Corozzo relied on negotiation, timing, and calculated influence. This approach preserved organizational stability and reinforced loyalty, demonstrating that subtlety, foresight, and diplomacy often achieve outcomes that force alone cannot. His ability to maintain balance in a volatile environment reflected his deep understanding of both human nature and organizational dynamics. Perception management was equally crucial during this period. Corozzo recognized that visibility could increase vulnerability, while subtle, strategic influence allowed him to maintain authority without attracting unnecessary attention. By controlling the flow of information, carefully managing interactions, and deploying intermediaries, he exercised influence across multiple operations while remaining largely shielded from scrutiny. This skillful orchestration of presence and perception ensured that his authority remained respected, that operations ran smoothly, and that legal exposure was minimized. Corozzo's ability to remain effective behind the scenes reinforced the legend of the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose impact was felt far beyond what was visible to the public or law enforcement. Mentorship and succession planning grew increasingly vital as Corozzo navigated these challenges. With personal risk at an all-time high, he focused on cultivating a network of capable, loyal, and disciplined associates who could execute operations independently. By distributing responsibility strategically and fostering competence among key members, He minimized vulnerability while maintaining influence. This investment in human capital ensured the resilience of the organization and allowed operations to continue efficiently despite the pressures surrounding him. Corozzo's leadership emphasized that long-term authority depends on both operational structure and the cultivation of capable individuals who can sustain organizational principles. Despite the mounting pressures, Corozzo's core principles, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight, remained unwavering. These guiding values informed every decision, shaped every interaction, and underpinned every operational adjustment. By relying on careful observation, analysis, and deliberate action, he maintained authority, operational continuity, and organizational cohesion, even under extraordinary scrutiny. Corozzo's story during this period illustrates that enduring influence is achieved not through intimidation or visible displays of power, but through preparation, calculated action, and the consistent application of human insight and operational intelligence. By the mid-2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life had entered a phase defined by reflection, adaptation, and strategic preservation. While his authority remained significant, the external environment demanded constant vigilance and adjustment. He balanced operational oversight, risk mitigation, and human management with a careful assessment of long-term implications, ensuring that the organization could continue functioning even in a highly hostile environment. Corozzo's approach demonstrated that leadership under pressure is not about overt displays of dominance, but about subtle control, foresight, and the careful orchestration of both people and operation. Chapter 14 presents a portrait of Nicholas Corozzo at a pivotal moment in his life. Legal pressures, operational complexity, and internal dynamics converged to create an environment that tested the limits of experience, discipline, and strategic intelligence. Yet through careful oversight, mentorship, loyalty cultivation, and meticulous planning, Corozzo preserved influence, maintained organizational cohesion, and ensured operational continuity. His story during this period highlights lessons in resilience, strategic thinking, and the subtle exercise of authority, offering insights into leadership, human behavior, and the enduring value of patience and foresight in high-stakes environments. Ultimately, this chapter captures the essence of Corozzo's enduring mastery, a combination of intelligence, patience, discretion, and strategic foresight that allowed him to navigate one of the most challenging phases of his life. His ability to maintain influence, protect his organization, and adapt to an increasingly complex and dangerous environment illustrates the profound importance of careful planning, human insight, and disciplined execution in achieving lasting authority and resilience. By the mid-2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life had entered a period defined by the convergence of legal peril, operational complexity, and personal reflection. After decades of quietly orchestrating New York's underworld from behind the scenes, he now faced a landscape in which the combined pressures of federal investigations, evolving criminal dynamics, and internal organizational challenges demanded unprecedented strategic foresight. Corozzo's influence, once unquestioned, was now tested not by rival gangs or street conflicts, but by an intricate web of legal scrutiny, surveillance, and the unpredictability of human loyalty. The stakes were higher than ever, and the slightest miscalculation could have devastating consequences. Yet, true to his reputation, Corozzo approached these challenges with the same calculated patience, intelligence, and composure that had defined his career. Operational management had become an exercise in meticulous risk mitigation. Gambling enterprises, loan operations, and other revenue streams were scrutinized with extreme care to minimize exposure while maintaining financial stability. Corozzo delegated execution to trusted intermediaries who could operate independently yet adhere to strict standards of discretion, accountability, and competence. Even while operating behind the scenes, he maintained comprehensive oversight, monitoring activities, evaluating performance, and adjusting strategies as circumstances evolved. The delicate balance between delegation and control reflected his understanding that authority is not maintained through direct presence alone, but through careful orchestration, disciplined oversight, and the cultivation of trust within a capable network. Internal cohesion and loyalty remained essential for survival. Corozzo understood that under the intensifying pressures of federal scrutiny, fear, ambition, or misunderstanding could fracture even the most disciplined organizations. He invested time in mentorship, guiding key associates not only in operational tactics but also in the philosophy of patience, discretion, and strategic awareness that had underpinned his career. By reinforcing these principles, He created a resilient structure in which associates understood their roles, their limitations, and the value of maintaining operational secrecy. Loyalty was continually reinforced through example, guidance, and the cultivation of trust, ensuring that the organization could withstand both external scrutiny and the internal turbulence that accompanied high-stakes operation. Risk assessment became the cornerstone of Corozzo's decision-making. Every move was evaluated for its potential consequences, both immediate and long-term. He anticipated challenges, preempted threats, and developed contingency plans that allowed the organization to adapt dynamically to evolving circumstances. Corozzo's decisions were never reactionary. Each action was informed by a combination of intelligence gathering, behavioral insight, and a deep understanding of the operational environment. By preparing for multiple scenarios in advance, he minimized exposure, preserved influence, and ensured the organization could continue functioning effectively even under sustained pressure. His strategic foresight distinguished him from less disciplined operators, solidifying his reputation as a master of subtle yet decisive control. Financial operations required extraordinary discipline. Corozzo implemented measures to monitor cash flow, protect revenue, and safeguard financial transactions from direct exposure. Trusted associates handled sensitive financial tasks, allowing operations to continue smoothly while reducing personal risk. This meticulous approach ensured that profitability was maintained even under the heightened pressures of law enforcement attention. Corozzo's ability to combine operational oversight with precise financial management demonstrated that influence in high-risk environments depends as much on the disciplined management of resources as on human relationships or strategic acumen. Control of information, money, and operations was inseparable from the preservation of power. Conflict resolution remained a defining feature of Corozzo's leadership. With external pressure increasing, tensions and rivalries were inevitable. Corozzo's approach was methodical. He analyzed motivations, identified leverage points, and intervened strategically to prevent escalation. Violence, though always a possible tool, was employed sparingly instead. He relied on negotiation, timing, and calculated influence to maintain authority. By managing conflicts quietly yet effectively, he preserved cohesion and reinforced loyalty. Associates understood that the exercise of power under Corozzo's leadership was measured and deliberate, and this consistency strengthened the organization's stability during an era of unprecedented scrutiny. Perception management continued to be critical. Corozzo recognized that visibility could invite danger, while subtle, strategic influence allowed him to exercise authority without attracting unnecessary attention. He carefully calibrated his public presence, interactions, and communications to maintain operational control while minimizing exposure. By leveraging trusted intermediaries, he extended his influence across multiple spheres while remaining largely in the shadows. This mastery of perception not only protected him from legal consequences but also reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose decisions and influence were felt far beyond what was outwardly visible. Mentorship and succession planning became increasingly vital during this phase. Recognizing that his personal risk had escalated, Corozzo focused on cultivating capable, loyal, and disciplined associates who could maintain operations independently. By distributing authority and responsibility strategically, he reduced vulnerability while ensuring operational continuity. Associates were trained to understand both the practical and philosophical aspects of organizational leadership, emphasizing the principles of patience, discretion, and foresight. Corozzo's investment in human capital reinforced the organization's resilience, demonstrating that the longevity of influence relies on both the people who execute strategy and the systems that guide them. Despite the mounting pressures, Corozzo's core values, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight, remained steadfast. These principles guided every decision, informed every interaction, and shaped every operational adjustment. By relying on careful observation, calculated intervention, and consistent adherence to his principles, he maintained authority, operational stability, and organizational cohesion in the face of extraordinary challenges. Corozzo's leadership demonstrated that true influence is cultivated through thoughtful planning, strategic execution, and the careful management of both people and resources, rather than through intimidation, impulsive action, or public displays of power. By the mid-2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life exemplified the delicate balance between influence, risk, and strategic execution. Legal scrutiny, operational complexity, and internal dynamics required constant vigilance, yet his disciplined approach allowed the organization to maintain stability and profitability. Corozzo navigated these pressures quietly, strategically, and effectively, ensuring that his authority and the cohesion of the network endured despite the evolving challenges. His story during this period highlights the enduring importance of foresight, disciplined leadership, and careful human management in sustaining influence under extreme conditions. Chapter 15 illustrates a critical juncture in Nicholas Corozzo's life, a moment when decades of experience, operational discipline, and strategic intelligence were tested against a landscape defined by intensified legal scrutiny and internal complexity. His ability to protect the organization, maintain loyalty, and sustain influence under extraordinary pressure demonstrates the enduring power of strategic patience, careful planning, and human-centered leadership. Corozzo's story serves as a testament to the value of intelligence, foresight, and disciplined execution, offering lessons that extend far beyond the criminal world to any context in which leadership, risk, and influence intersect. Ultimately, this chapter captures the essence of Corozzo's mastery during a pivotal phase, a combination of operational intelligence, strategic foresight, and human insight that allowed him to maintain authority, guide his organization, and adapt to one of the most challenging periods of his life. His story provides enduring lessons in resilience, strategic planning, and the subtle exercise of influence, demonstrating that true power is cultivated quietly, carefully, and consistently, even under the most formidable pressures. By the mid to late 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life had entered a phase where the stakes were higher than ever. For decades, he had navigated New York's underworld with intelligence, patience, and precision, exercising influence from behind the scenes with calculated discretion. But the world had changed, and so had the challenges he faced. Federal investigations were more sophisticated, utilizing cutting-edge surveillance technology, financial audits, and the careful cultivation of informants to dismantle long-standing criminal networks. At the same time, younger, ambitious figures within the organization and the broader underworld were testing boundaries, seeking opportunities to expand influence or exploit perceived weaknesses. Corozzo's leadership, built on decades of strategy, discretion, and organizational foresight, was now under unprecedented pressure, demanding adaptability, resilience, and meticulous planning. And operational control became increasingly complex under these circumstances. Every revenue-generating activity, from gambling operations to loan networks and other enterprises, required careful monitoring to maintain both profitability and discretion. Corozzo relied on trusted lieutenants to execute daily operations, ensuring that sensitive tasks were handled with competence and loyalty, while he maintained a comprehensive understanding of the broader organizational landscape. Delegation was essential for managing multiple moving parts without attracting attention, yet oversight was thorough. Corozzo's decisions reflected a balance of strategic patience and operational intelligence, ensuring that the organization remained stable even as scrutiny intensified. The discipline and foresight that had defined his career now became the organization's lifeline. Maintaining internal cohesion was equally critical. In high-pressure environments, even minor disruptions can escalate into crisis. Corozzo understood that fear, uncertainty, or ambition could destabilize loyalty and fracture organizational integrity. He invested time in mentoring key associates, reinforcing the principles of discretion, accountability, and strategic thinking that had long underpinned the organization. Associates were trained not only to execute operational tasks but also to internalize the philosophy of measured decision-making and patient observation. By cultivating trust, competence, and loyalty, Corozzo ensured that the organization could withstand both external scrutiny and internal volatility, demonstrating the central role of human insight in sustaining influence. Risk management became a defining feature of Corozzo's strategy. Every decision, from operational shifts to personal interactions, was carefully evaluated for potential vulnerabilities. He anticipated challenges, preempted threats, and implemented contingencies to maintain both operational continuity and organizational stability. Corozzo's approach was methodical and proactive. Rather than reacting to crises, he designed strategies to prevent them from arising in the first place. This foresight, informed by decades of experience, allowed him to maintain authority, even when faced with complex legal investigations, and shifting internal dynamics. Corozzo's ability to structure operations in a way that minimized exposure while preserving influence exemplified his mastery of strategic management. Financial operations required exceptional discipline. Corozzo implemented systems to monitor cash flow, safeguard revenue, and protect sensitive financial transactions from legal exposure. Trusted associates managed these tasks independently, but under his careful supervision, ensuring accountability and efficiency. This meticulous approach allowed the organization to continue generating income while reducing direct personal risk. Corozzo's combination of financial oversight, operational control, and strategic delegation underscored a fundamental principle: sustainable influence depends on the careful management of both resources and people. Profitability, loyalty, and discretion were interlinked, forming the foundation for organizational resilience. Conflict resolution continued to define Corozzo's leadership. In a high-stakes environment, disputes among associates, rival factions, and opportunistic actors were inevitable. Corozzo handled these situations with intelligence, patience, and strategic leverage. By assessing motivations, identifying vulnerabilities, and intervening discreetly, he prevented conflicts from escalating into violence that could destabilize the organization or draw unnecessary attention. While the threat of violence was always present, it was employed strategically and sparingly. Corozzo's focus on negotiation, timing, and careful intervention allowed him to maintain stability and reinforce loyalty, demonstrating that influence is most effectively exercised through strategy, foresight, and human insight rather than brute force. Perception management remained an essential component of his strategy. Corozzo recognized that visibility could increase vulnerability, while subtle influence allowed him to maintain authority without attracting unwanted attention. By controlling interactions, delegating communication, and carefully managing the flow of information, he extended his influence across the organization while remaining largely in the shadows. This mastery of presence and perception reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose authority was profound, pervasive, and quietly enforced. Corozzo's influence was not measured by public recognition, but by the ability to shape decisions, maintain stability, and guide operations effectively. Mentorship and succession planning took on heightened significance. Corozzo recognized that personal risk was increasing, and that the organization's survival depended on cultivating capable, loyal, and disciplined associates who could manage operations independently. By distributing responsibilities strategically, he minimized vulnerability and ensured continuity. Associates were trained to understand both the practical and philosophical dimensions of leadership, emphasizing discretion, strategic thinking, and operational foresight. This investment in human capital strengthened organizational resilience and guaranteed that the principles that had guided Corozzo's leadership would endure beyond his direct involvement. Despite the intensifying pressures, Corozzo's guiding principles, intelligence, patience, discretion, and strategic foresight, remained unwavering. These values informed every decision, interaction, and operational adjustment. By relying on careful observation, calculated intervention, and deliberate planning, he maintained authority, operational continuity, and organizational cohesion. Corozzo's leadership demonstrated that true influence is cultivated through discipline, insight, and strategic execution rather than through intimidation, impulsive action, or public displays of power. The lessons of his life extended beyond the criminal context, illustrating that resilience and enduring authority are built through foresight, patience, and human-centered strategy. By the late 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo had entered a phase of strategic preservation, while his authority within the underworld remained significant. External pressures demanded constant vigilance and adaptation. Legal scrutiny, evolving rivalries, and operational complexity required continuous monitoring. Yet Corozzo's disciplined approach allowed the organization to maintain cohesion, stability, and profitability. He navigated these challenges quietly and effectively, ensuring that his influence endured even in a high-risk environment. His story during this period highlights the enduring importance of strategic thinking, human insight, and operational discipline in sustaining influence under extreme conditions. Chapter 16 illustrates a defining moment in Nicholas Corozzo's life, when decades of experience, operational skill, and strategic intelligence were tested against an environment of unprecedented pressure. His ability to maintain authority, manage internal dynamics, and protect the organization demonstrates the enduring power of foresight, discipline, and careful human management. Corozzo's story during this period offers lessons in leadership, strategic patience, and the subtle exercise of influence, showing that true power is sustained not through fear or visibility, but through careful planning, trust, and the disciplined execution of strategy. Ultimately, this chapter captures the essence of Corozzo's enduring mastery, a blend of operational intelligence, foresight, and human understanding that allowed him to guide his organization, navigate legal challenges, and preserve authority in one of the most demanding periods of his life. His story provides insights into resilience, strategic leadership, and the subtle yet profound exercise of influence, offering lessons that extend far beyond the criminal world into any context where leadership, risk, and complex dynamics intersect. By the late 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life had entered a period that combined reflection, strategic preservation, and the intensifying reality of legal confrontation. After decades of quietly orchestrating New York's underworld from behind the scenes, he now faced the culmination of pressures that had been mounting over years: federal investigations, persistent surveillance, and the growing unpredictability of human ambition. Corozzo's authority, once unquestioned and respected, was now challenged not only by law enforcement but also by the subtle fractures that emerge when high-stakes pressure pushes even the most loyal associates to the limits of endurance. Survival, influence, and the continuity of his organization demanded more than operational skill. It required mastery of human behavior, strategic foresight, and a capacity to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. Operational oversight had become an exercise in extreme precision. Every revenue-generating activity, whether it was gambling operations, loans, or other ventures, was meticulously monitored and adjusted to reduce exposure while maintaining profitability. Corozzo relied heavily on trusted lieutenants to manage daily operations, ensuring that tasks were executed with discretion, competence, and loyalty. Delegation was essential in managing multiple simultaneous operations without attracting attention. Yet oversight remained thorough. Every move was analyzed not only for immediate consequences but for long-term impact, reflecting a level of strategic foresight that few could match. Corozzo's leadership during this period demonstrated the delicate balance between delegation, control, and risk mitigation, showing that influence is sustained through intelligence and discipline as much as authority. Maintaining internal cohesion under escalating pressures became a critical priority. Corozzo understood that fear, ambition, or uncertainty could destabilize even the most disciplined networks. To prevent fractures, he emphasized mentorship and reinforcement of organizational principles, loyalty, discretion, strategic patience, and operational competence. Associates were trained not merely to perform tasks, but to internalize the philosophy of measured decision-making and long-term strategic thinking. By cultivating trust, competence, and discipline, Corozzo ensured that the organization could endure external pressures while minimizing internal volatility. Loyalty was reinforced through consistent guidance, strategic incentives, and the cultivation of a culture in which operational excellence and discretion were rewarded above all else. Risk management reached a level of unparalleled importance. Every decision, operational, personal, and organizational, was evaluated for potential vulnerabilities. Corozzo anticipated legal threats, rival opportunism, and internal lapses, developing contingency plans to ensure continuity and resilience. His decision-making was never reactive. Each action was informed by careful observation, analysis of behavioral patterns, and an understanding of systemic risk. By preempting challenges and preparing strategic responses in advance, Corozzo minimized exposure while preserving authority and operational control. His approach demonstrated the value of foresight, patience, and calculated action in navigating high-stakes, high-pressure environments. Financial management remained a cornerstone of operational stability. Corozzo implemented strict protocols to safeguard revenue, monitor cash flow, and insulate financial transactions from legal scrutiny. Trusted associates executed these tasks independently, but under his careful oversight, ensuring both accountability and efficiency. Profitability was maintained not through recklessness, but through disciplined planning and strategic oversight. Corozzo understood that in a high-risk environment, financial stability was inseparable from organizational resilience, loyalty, and discretion. Management of resources became both a tactical and strategic tool, reinforcing operational continuity while reducing exposure to legal or operational threats. Conflict resolution continued to define Corozzo's leadership. In a world where pressures were mounting and stakes were high, disputes were inevitable. Corozzo approached each situation with careful evaluation, identifying leverage points, understanding motivations, and intervening strategically to prevent escalation. Violence, while ever present as a potential tool, was rarely the first choice. Negotiation, timing, and calculated influence were preferred. By maintaining this disciplined approach, he preserved cohesion, reinforced loyalty, and minimized unnecessary exposure to both internal and external threats. The subtle exercise of authority, combined with strategic foresight, allowed him to maintain stability in a landscape increasingly defined by unpredictability. Perception management became more critical than ever. Corozzo recognized that exposure could be dangerous, while subtle influence allowed him to exercise authority without unnecessary risk. He carefully calibrated interactions, information flow, and operational visibility, extending influence across the organization while remaining largely in the shadows. By controlling what was seen and what remained hidden, Corozzo preserved both operational integrity and personal safety. His reputation as the shadow behind the curtain was not just a title. It was a reflection of his ability to command influence quietly, decisively, and without drawing undue attention to himself or the organization. Mentorship and succession planning took on heightened importance. Corozzo knew that his personal risk had increased, and that the organization's survival depended on a cadre of capable, disciplined, and loyal associates. Responsibility was strategically distributed to ensure that operations continued efficiently even under heightened scrutiny. Associates were trained to understand not only operational mechanics but also the philosophical principles of leadership, patience, and strategic foresight. Corozzo's investment in human capital ensured organizational resilience, demonstrating that the longevity of influence relies on both capable personnel and well-structured systems. Despite the intensifying pressures of legal scrutiny and internal dynamics, Corozzo's core principles, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight remained steadfast. These guiding values informed every decision, shaped every interaction, and underpinned all operational adjustments. Through observation, deliberate action, and careful analysis, he maintained authority, operational continuity, and cohesion, demonstrating that true influence is cultivated through strategic execution rather than intimidation, impulsivity, or public display. Corozzo's leadership during this period illustrates that resilience and authority are sustained through disciplined foresight, human understanding, and an operational mastery. By the late 2010s, Nicholas Corozzo's life reflected the intersection of influence, risk, and strategic preservation. Legal scrutiny, evolving rivalries, and operational complexity demanded constant vigilance and adaptation. Yet his disciplined approach allowed the organization to maintain stability and profitability, even in a high-pressure environment. Corozzo navigated these challenges quietly and effectively, ensuring that his influence endured and that the organization's cohesion remained intact. His story during this period underscores the importance of careful planning, human insight, and strategic foresight in sustaining influence in any high-stakes context. Chapter 17 captures a critical phase in Nicholas Corozzo's life, when decades of experience, operational intelligence, and strategic judgment were tested against a landscape of unprecedented pressure. His ability to maintain authority, manage internal dynamics, and protect the organization demonstrates the enduring power of foresight, discipline, and strategic execution. Corozzo's story offers lessons in leadership, resilience, and the subtle exercise of influence, showing that true power is cultivated quietly, consistently, and deliberately. Ultimately, this chapter portrays Corozzo's mastery in one of the most challenging phases of his life, a blend of operational intelligence, strategic foresight, and human understanding that allowed him to navigate legal scrutiny, organizational complexity, and evolving challenges. His story highlights the importance of patient execution, careful planning, and subtle influence, offering lessons that extend far beyond the underworld into any arena where leadership, risk, and complex decision-making intersect. Nicholas Corozzo remained, even under the heaviest pressures, a figure defined by strategy, foresight, and the quiet power of disciplined intelligence. By the late 2010s and moving into the early 2020s, Nicholas Corozzo faced an environment where every decision, every connection, every movement carried enormous weight. For decades, he had maneuvered New York's underworld with a quiet precision, building influence and control while avoiding unnecessary exposure. But now, the pressures of age, legal scrutiny, and the shifting dynamics of organized crime demanded not just experience and foresight, but a kind of strategic survival instinct that few could maintain. Corozzo's world had narrowed, focusing increasingly on preservation of himself, of his associates, and of the principles and structures he had meticulously developed over decades. The life of shadows he had cultivated was no longer just a style of leadership, it was a necessity. Operational management became more delicate than ever. Traditional revenue streams such as gambling, loan sharking, and other enterprises remained critical to organizational survival. But they now existed under the constant gaze of federal authorities. Corozzo relied on his inner circle to execute these operations with precision and discretion, delegating authority while maintaining a strategic overview that ensured accountability, risk mitigation, and operational integrity. Each decision was weighed for its immediate outcomes and its long-term consequences. Delegation alone could not ensure survival. Oversight, foresight, and the careful calibration of operational exposure were equally essential. Corozzo's experience allowed him to orchestrate complex operations with a subtlety that ensured influence without inviting scrutiny, a skill honed over decades of practice. Internal cohesion was essential to weather this period of heightened pressure. Even the most loyal associates could waver when fear and uncertainty penetrated their confidence. Corozzo devoted himself to reinforcing loyalty, discipline, and adherence to the organization's guiding principles. Mentorship extended beyond operational tasks, encompassing philosophy, strategy, and ethical boundaries within the criminal world. Associates were trained to anticipate challenges, exercise discretion, and understand the consequences of their actions. By reinforcing trust and competence, Corozzo ensured that his organization remained cohesive and resilient, able to withstand both the increasing reach of law enforcement and the temptations of ambition that often fractured lesser networks. Risk management and strategic foresight defined Corozzo's approach. He continuously evaluated vulnerabilities, anticipated legal threats, and assessed the intentions of both internal and external actors. Contingency planning became central to his strategy, ensuring that the organization could function effectively even when confronted with disruption or exposure. Decisions were never reactionary. Each move reflected a deliberate process of analysis, prediction, and mitigation. By anticipating potential crises and preparing for multiple scenarios, Corozzo maintained influence, operational continuity, and personal safety. His meticulous approach underscored the principle that in high-stakes environments, foresight and planning are more powerful than reactive force or impulsive action. Financial management was a critical pillar during this period. Corozzo implemented strict protocols to safeguard revenue, protect cash flow, and insulate financial operations from federal detection. Trusted lieutenants executed transactions independently but remained under his strategic supervision, ensuring both efficiency and security. Profitability and operational continuity depended on careful planning and precise management, reinforcing the link between financial oversight and organizational resilience. Corozzo's approach demonstrated that true influence extends beyond leadership. It encompasses the disciplined control of resources, accountability systems, and operational integrity. Conflict resolution was another vital skill that sustained Corozzo's influence. In an environment defined by intense pressure, rivalries and disputes were inevitable. Corozzo addressed these situations with intelligence, subtlety, and strategic leverage. He evaluated motivations, identified leverage points, and intervened decisively before conflicts could escalate. Violence, though always available, was rarely employed. Instead, he relied on negotiation, timing, and calculated influence. By maintaining organizational stability and reinforcing loyalty through measured action, Corozzo preserved both the integrity and the cohesion of the network. His ability to manage disputes quietly yet effectively demonstrated the power of strategic foresight and human insight in high-pressure leadership. Perception management became increasingly essential. Corozzo recognized that exposure could magnify risk, while influence exercised behind the scenes offered protection. He carefully controlled interactions, delegated communications through trusted intermediaries, and extended his influence across multiple spheres while remaining largely invisible to authorities and competitors alike. This strategic management of presence allowed him to guide operations, reinforce loyalty, and maintain authority without attracting unnecessary attention. The legend of the shadow behind the curtain was no exaggeration. It accurately reflected the manner in which Corozzo exerted influence, quietly shaping outcomes without revealing himself to public or legal scrutiny. Mentorship and succession planning remained central to long-term organizational survival. Corozzo understood that his personal involvement could not extend indefinitely, and that capable, loyal associates were necessary to maintain operations in his absence. Responsibility was distributed strategically, ensuring operational continuity while reducing exposure. Associates were instructed not only in operational mechanics but also in the philosophical principles of leadership, patient decision-making, and strategic foresight. By cultivating a network of competent individuals, Corozzo ensured that the organization would survive beyond his active involvement, strengthening its resilience and securing his legacy as a strategist and leader. Despite these pressures, Corozzo's guiding principles, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight, remained unchanged. These values informed every decision, interaction, and operational adjustment. By relying on careful observation, deliberate action, and a commitment to principle, he preserved authority, operational stability, and organizational cohesion in a landscape defined by increasing complexity and risk. Corozzo's leadership illustrates that enduring influence is achieved not through intimidation or visibility, but through thoughtful planning, disciplined execution, and the cultivation of trust and loyalty among capable associates. By the early 2020s, Nicholas Corozzo's focus had shifted toward the preservation of legacy and influence in a world that had grown more legally and operationally complex. Legal scrutiny, technological surveillance, and evolving criminal dynamics demanded constant vigilance. Yet Corozzo's disciplined approach ensured that operations continued, loyalty was maintained, and authority endured. His ability to navigate these pressures quietly, strategically, and effectively demonstrated the enduring value of foresight, human insight, and operational discipline. The culmination of his career reflected not only decades of operational mastery but also an acute understanding of the human, strategic, and ethical dimensions of leadership in high-stakes environments. Chapter 18 captures a critical phase in Nicholas Corozzo's life, when the pressures of law enforcement, internal dynamics, and operational complexity converged to test his leadership and strategic acumen. His ability to maintain authority, manage conflicts, and protect both himself and the organization underscores the power of intelligence, patience, and strategic foresight. Corozzo's story serves as a case study in resilience, effective leadership, and the subtle exercise of influence, illustrating that true authority is sustained through careful planning, disciplined execution, and a deep understanding of human behavior. Ultimately, this chapter highlights Corozzo's enduring mastery, the ability to navigate an environment of extreme legal and operational pressure, preserve organizational cohesion, and maintain authority while guiding his network strategically. His story offers lessons in resilience, foresight, and leadership, showing that influence is cultivated quietly, patiently, and deliberately. Even in the face of unprecedented challenges, Nicholas Corozzo remained a figure defined not by visible power, but by the subtle, strategic control he exercised over both his organization and the environment in which it operated. As Nicholas Corozzo entered the later years of his life, the cumulative weight of decades spent maneuvering New York's underworld became increasingly apparent. The years had tested his patience, intelligence, and ability to navigate a world defined by both opportunity and extreme risk. Now, facing the culmination of legal pressure, organizational responsibility, and personal reflection, Corozzo's focus shifted toward the preservation of legacy, the protection of associates, and the subtle exercise of influence that had defined his career. For him, leadership was no longer about dominance or notoriety. It was about careful orchestration, measured foresight, and ensuring that the principles he had cultivated endured beyond his immediate presence. Operational control, though still essential, had evolved into a task that required meticulous delegation and constant strategic oversight. Revenue-generating activities such as gambling operations, loans, and other enterprises continued to provide both income and influence, but their management demanded discretion and precision at an unprecedented level. Corozzo relied on a cadre of trusted lieutenants to handle day-to-day operations independently, while he maintained an overarching strategic vision that accounted for risk, exposure, and long-term continuity. Each decision reflected careful consideration of both immediate operational outcomes and broader implications, illustrating the depth of his experience and his commitment to sustaining the organization's structure. Internal cohesion remained a cornerstone of Corozzo's leadership. Years of external pressures, combined with the inherent volatility of human ambition, meant that maintaining loyalty and discipline among associates required more than authority. It required mentorship, trust, and philosophical guidance. Corozzo invested in his inner circle not merely as operatives, but as extensions of his strategic vision, cultivating individuals capable of decision-making, discretion, and ethical judgment within the constraints of a high-stakes world. By reinforcing loyalty and competence, he ensured that the organization remained resilient, able to withstand both the pressures of law enforcement and the inevitable challenges that arise within any complex network of human relationships. Strategic foresight defined Corozzo's approach during this phase of life. Every interaction, every operational shift, and every decision was evaluated for its potential consequences, both immediate and long-term. He anticipated legal threats, assessed the ambitions and vulnerabilities of associates and rivals, and prepared contingencies designed to preserve stability and authority. His decision-making was deliberate, informed by decades of experience, and characterized by a remarkable capacity to balance risk with opportunity. By proactively managing threats and planning for multiple scenarios, Corozzo maintained influence and operational continuity even under circumstances that would have overwhelmed less disciplined leaders. Financial management remained a critical component of his strategy. Corozzo implemented systems designed to monitor cash flow, safeguard revenue, and insulate operations from legal exposure. Trusted associates managed financial operations independently, but under his strategic supervision, ensuring both accountability and operational efficiency. This disciplined approach allowed the organization to remain profitable, stable, and resilient despite external pressures. Corozzo understood that financial stability was inseparable from operational control and organizational cohesion, and he meticulously managed both to secure the long-term viability of his enterprise. Conflict resolution continued to be a defining feature of Corozzo's leadership. The potential for disputes, both internal and external, remained ever present. Yet he navigated these challenges with intelligence, patience, and subtle strategic leverage. Violence, while always an available tool in the underworld, was employed sparingly. Negotiation, timing, and calculated influence were preferred. By understanding motivations, evaluating leverage, and intervening strategically, Corozzo maintained stability and reinforced loyalty among associates. His approach emphasized the importance of restraint, careful judgment, and the exercise of influence through foresight rather than force. Perception management remained a vital skill. Corozzo recognized that visibility increased vulnerability, while subtle influence allowed him to guide outcomes without drawing unnecessary attention. By controlling interactions, managing information flow, and delegating communication through trusted intermediaries, he extended his authority across operations while maintaining a low personal profile. This approach reinforced his reputation as the shadow behind the curtain, a figure whose influence was profound, quiet, and pervasive. Corozzo's legacy was defined not by ostentation, but by the careful, deliberate impact he had on the network and its enduring structure. Mentorship and succession planning were central to Corozzo's final phase. Understanding that his personal involvement could not continue indefinitely, he cultivated a network of loyal, capable, and disciplined associates who could maintain operations in his absence. Responsibility was distributed strategically to ensure continuity, and his associates were trained to understand both operational mechanics and the philosophy of patient, strategic leadership. By investing in human capital, Corozzo ensured that the principles, values, and strategies he had developed would survive beyond his active involvement, preserving the integrity of the organization and securing the continuity of his influence. Despite the accumulation of pressure, scrutiny, and complexity, Corozzo's core principles, intelligence, discretion, patience, and strategic foresight, remained unwavering. Every decision, interaction, and operational adjustment reflected these values, demonstrating that true influence is cultivated through careful planning, disciplined execution, and human insight rather than through intimidation, impulsive action, or visible displays of power. Corozzo's story in this final chapter illustrates that authority and resilience are sustained through the consistent application of principle, careful orchestration, and a deep understanding of both human behavior and systemic dynamics. By the early 2020s, Nicholas Corozzo had transitioned into a phase characterized by reflection and strategic preservation. While his authority remained significant, the challenges of legal scrutiny, technological surveillance, and organizational complexity demanded constant vigilance. Yet his disciplined approach ensured that operations continued, loyalty was maintained, and influence endured. Corozzo's ability to navigate these pressures quietly, strategically, and effectively demonstrated the enduring power of foresight, human insight, and operational mastery. His life at this stage reflected not only the culmination of decades of experience, but also an acute understanding of the principles of leadership, patience, and strategic influence. Chapter 19 presents Nicholas Corozzo's life at its apex, in terms of legacy, influence, and strategic mastery. Legal pressures, organizational responsibility, and personal reflection converged to create an environment that demanded exceptional leadership. Corozzo's ability to maintain authority, guide associates, manage conflicts, and preserve operational stability underscores the enduring value of intelligence, foresight, and disciplined execution. His story serves as a testament to resilience, strategic patience, and the subtle exercise of influence, illustrating that true power is cultivated quietly, deliberately, and thoughtfully over time. Ultimately, this chapter captures the essence of Nicholas Corozzo's legacy. His life demonstrates that influence is sustained not through fear or spectacle, but through the careful management of people, resources, and risk, the cultivation of loyalty and competence, and the consistent application of principle and strategy. Corozzo's story offers lessons that extend beyond the underworld, providing insight into leadership, resilience, and the subtle yet profound exercise of influence. In the end, the shadow behind the curtain remains a figure defined by strategy, discretion, and foresight, leaving behind a legacy that teaches the enduring power of intelligence, patience, and disciplined execution in navigating even the most complex and high-stakes environments.